pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic. Body outside speed off. Speed off.
Yikes. You bet.
Okay.
We don't need any more of these.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryogenic proof testing in Boca Chica, Texas. We're looking at a live view of Starship SN8, which is already venting a bit and starting to change colors, it looks like, as they begin presumably liquid nitrogen loading operations tonight. This camera view, as always, is being brought to us by Mary, who is out there with the camera, bringing us this super awesome view of Starship SN8 as it undergoes the third cryogenic proof test so far. We're not sure why they're doing more cryogenic proof tests as we've seen in the past. Elon did tweet after the first cryogenic proof test that there was a small leak, so they had to do a retest. But after that, we did not get any official word as to why a third test is now necessary. So we're not sure if that was part of the original plan, or if this test is a result of something not being quite right last night / early this morning when we saw the other test take place. But today's testing window lasts until 6 a.m. Central Time. Hopefully, we will not need all of that today. But I am Michael Baylor from NASASpaceflight.com, and I will be providing some of the commentary for now. We kind of had a light team today because we've been doing so much streaming. You saw the live view we had from Port Canaveral earlier today. We did a stream with the Falcon 9 booster arriving in port, and we showed off our new fancy fleet cam that DOS set up. So you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 on your left-hand side of the screen in port right now as it awaits processing, which will likely start tomorrow morning. So that's a live view from Port Canaveral on your left, and on the right you have a live view from Boca Chica. Both of those feeds are from NASA spaceflight cameras. So we're putting live cameras all over the place these days. But anyway, back in Texas, hopefully this test will not use the entire window because I do not want to be up all night once again. But almost 11 p.m. Central Time, and so far it's looking quite promising. You can clearly see the lower liquid oxygen tank and the upper methane tank are already starting to look pretty cold. You can see that color changing. So hopefully we'll see some frost forming soon. On the previous 2 nights of testing, we've seen the frost form first on the lower liquid oxygen tank. So that's probably what we're going to look for first. And if you look on our status bar on the far left, we kind of walk you through what we expect to see tonight. So first we'll see the frost increase on the liquid oxygen tank until it covers the entire tank. Then it will hold that state for between, I think it was about an hour that the frost held on the liquid oxygen tank before it started increasing on the CH4 tank. So that methane tank usually does not get loaded with liquid nitrogen until a bit into the testing. And then once the liquid nitrogen has been loaded into the liquid oxygen tank and the CH4 tank, that is when they will use the hydraulic rams at the base of the pad to simulate the forces of the Raptor engine and make sure that the Starship is properly suitable for flight. So you might hear me mentioning liquid oxygen tank, a methane tank, and liquid nitrogen. Normally, if this was a flight, they would put the liquid oxygen into the liquid oxygen tank, but because this is a test, they're putting liquid nitrogen into the liquid oxygen tank, because nitrogen is not it's inert. It's not going to cause an explosion. If they put liquid oxygen into the liquid oxygen tank and liquid methane into the methane tank, and there was an anomaly, those two things can combust. But if they put liquid nitrogen into both tanks, then they won't get combustion if there's an accident. So that's why for this test, if they don't plan to ignite the engines, they're using liquid nitrogen instead of liquid oxygen and methane. But if you hear me referring to the liquid oxygen tank and the methane tank, just remember liquid nitrogen is what is going to be in those tanks tonight, even though I'm calling them by what they would normally have inside the tanks during a flight test or a static fire. So I hope that makes sense. But again, if you have any questions, please tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight, and we'll try to answer some questions, because this will probably be a multi-hour test, at least based on the previous nights of testing that we've seen. But with that, I will probably be taking breaks on and off here because I am the only person commentating, and we should have DOS on later possibly, so there'll be more voices. But I will be on and off commentating as much as possible. Unfortunately, I know we've had super cool ambient audio the previous few nights, but it is super windy out there. So right now we're just getting tons of wind noise in the ambient audio microphone. So we had that off, but if the wind dies down at some point later tonight, maybe we can try to pick up some of those venting noises from Starship. But with that, I will hop into our panel and see if we have any questions. What is the purpose behind test 3? Another failure point, or are they testing something else specifically? Again, I'm not exactly sure. Elon has not tweeted why they have decided to do a third test. It is very likely that there is some minor issue with the previous test that they are trying to retest to make sure it's going to fix, but we don't know for sure. We do not have any official word from SpaceX, so I wish I knew the answer to your question, but unfortunately, Elon has not confirmed that on Twitter. When do you think a working Starship will be done? Well, we've seen SN5 and SN6 fly already, so those were not like a full Starship with a nose cone, but they were working enough to fly. So depends on what your definition of working is. But Starship SN8, the one you're looking at right now, is planned to get a nose cone at some point, and that will give it all the major elements that a full-scale Starship will have. So SN8 is going to be the first one to look like a proper Starship with nose cones and the flaps or fins, whatever you want to call them. But probably a week or two until SN8 gets a nose cone if all goes well. And Bully Space Industries with $5 super chat. Hey all, first proof of SN8 I have seen so far thanks to midterms. Well, I'm glad your midterms are now over, I'm assuming, if you're able to join the stream tonight, so hope your exams went well. How quick do the tanks fill? During the previous nights of testing, we've seen the tanks fill super quick, but after they filled the tanks, then they kind of let them hold for quite a while. So the actual test will probably take at least 2 hours if I had to guess. But the frost, once you start seeing frost, the frost typically rises pretty quickly. Although last night it did take a bit longer on the liquid oxygen tank, but particularly on the methane tank, once they start loading that methane tank, it frosts over in a couple of minutes usually. But still waiting to see frost on the liquid oxygen tank. And as a reminder, the liquid oxygen tank is the lower of the two tanks, but it does not reach the absolute bottom of the test article. Those bottom rings are actually where the Raptor engine is located inside a Starship. So you can see how kind of the middle section of the Starship has that, you can tell it's getting cold, there's some condensation forming. That middle section is the liquid oxygen tank, and then the upper section is the methane tank, and the lower section is the skirt that houses the Raptor engines and the landing line. Yes, I do need to draw it, but unfortunately, I do not have the telestration capabilities that DOS has. But maybe later on, if you stay tuned, we'll get DOS on and have him draw you some amazing pictures with his artistic talents. And again, if you're asking questions about ambient audio, it is too windy right now. You will just hear lots of noise. So to save your ears from the horrendous noise of wind, we have cut the ambient audio for now, but if the weather improves, we will bring the ambient audio on. Still seeing lots of endings. So presumably they're getting this thing ready for liquid nitrogen loading if they are not already loading it. It's always hard to tell when they start loading because the bulkheads have to be filled up before the tank is actually touching the outer section of Starship where we would actually see the frost forming. Yes, Jim, these hydraulic rams are still on the stand. In fact, if you look through the stand, Jim, you can see there's white. It's kind of hard to tell which structure I'm talking about, but there are some white supports, some white support struts, kind of in the dead center of that stand, and that is supporting these thrust rams. Hunter, thank you for the $5. We appreciate it. We are seeing a lot of condensation coming out that aft portion of the vehicle. So that might be a good sign that they are loading liquid nitrogen because that means there's some very cold liquid being moved around to get the metal cold enough that condensation is coming off of it. Might also be some venting down there, but I think some of that is just condensation from the atmosphere getting cold. I'm just checking in on the wind right now. You can hear that on the ambient audio. It's all wind, so I will leave that off for now. Fixed grin. I'm the only one right now because we have streamed the 2 previous nights in a row of cryogenic proof testing for several hours during the middle of the night. And then we streamed 3 more hours this afternoon of Falcon 9 in port. So the team has been stretched pretty thin, so we are all taking turns. So in a little bit, somebody else will come on and give me a break, but we do not have the full team today because people need to catch up on real life, people need to catch up on sleep. So that is the reason for only me being on commentary today. And Andy, we do have a wind sock on the mic. It's howling out there. Trust me. There's only so much you can do. And Garboid Media, welcome to Red Team. We appreciate your support. question about how many pounds of force does thrust simulator use? That's a great question. I would love to know the answer. It probably depends on how many Raptor engines they are simulating. I mean, I would assume they are simulating 3 Raptors because that's what they're going to be using for the flight. And Raptor produces about 2,200 kilonewtons of thrust, which is, I will have to convert to pounds of force, which is 200,000 pounds of force, I believe. So maybe 600,000 pounds of force if they're simulating 3 Raptors, something like that. But we've not seen official confirmation, and it could be that they're simulating more than that because you want to make sure that you have margin in your design. So I would not be surprised if they've actually pushed the limits beyond what 3 Raptors would normally produce, just so they have extra margin in their design. And we've seen that with the pressurizing too. They are pressurizing this Starship slightly past what they need to be able to withstand the flight, so they have some margin. Yes, Hunter, that is a lot of force. It's about 2.5 Merlin engines, equivalent to 1 Raptor engine. So if you think about a Falcon 9 having 9 Merlin engines and Starship having 3 Raptor engines, SN8 is not going to be that far away from the thrust of a Falcon 9. And Jack, who is managing a question queue, has put in my queue, is Serial a suit? I am not even going to answer that, but let me know in chat if you think Serial is a suit or not. Jake, there is no targeted date for the 15-kilometer hop yet. It is, I'm sure SpaceX has an internal target, but it's basically impossible to say until we see a static fire, nose cancellation, another static fire. There's just so much stuff that has to happen before that. It's impossible to predict the schedule because I think there'll be a lot of. This is the first time that a Starship is going to have 3 engines, so presumably there will be a lot of trial and error to get that full, static fire sequence down. I think it might take a few attempts, but it looks like I am seeing some frost forming on the liquid oxygen tank, if I'm not mistaken, on the bottom third of the vehicle where the liquid oxygen tank starts. You can see a little bit of frost starting to form. So if you rewind your video, you can kind of see it start to appear. So I'm going to progress our timeline to frost increasing on the liquid oxygen tank because we are starting to see some frost. It sounds like we might be getting another commentator on soon. So that is good because I don't know how I'm going to be able to talk tomorrow if this test lasts 4 hours and it's only me. And yes, you're just joining us. They are doing another cryogenic proof test. We do not know why they're doing another test. There could have been a problem on the previous line of testing, but for whatever reason, they have decided that they have to do another test. So whether it was part of the plan or a fix that is being retested, here we are with a third total cryogenic proof test with Starship SN8. Doesn't look like that frost is rising too quickly yet, but it is certainly slowly increasing somewhat. Sebastian, thank you for the membership. Ollie Nelson was a membership and a $1.49 super chat. Thank you so much for the support, everyone. It's super appreciated that some people out there who are able to afford supporting the stream monetarily do that, because of course it is not cheap to produce streams like this. We have several modems running and burning a lot of data. So the data plans to bring this picture to you are not cheap. So we really appreciate it, everyone who super chats or becomes a member, because it helps make this stream possible for everyone else to do it. And I know everyone who is watching the stream appreciates that people are willing to help support this and make it happen. But that frost is starting to increase now. We're seeing that full ring along the bottom of the liquid oxygen tank. So that is a promising sign. That's a good question, Rodney. They were scrapping a couple of, or at least one nose cone in the latest daily video to be posted today. But I don't think I could be wrong. I don't think we know which nose cone will get the flaps for SN8. There are flaps on site for the new nose cone. They've yet to be installed yet, so it's a bit unclear which nose cone is actually the one that's designated for SN8. That is something we're still waiting to learn more about. But I'm really excited to see the nose cone stack. I presume we will be able to bring it to you live when they lift that nose cone on top of SN8. That is going to be a sight to see, because we've not seen that since Starship Mark 1. And Mark 1 only got its nose cone as a production site, and then they took it off, and it never got it at the pad. So if SN8 survives the cryogenic proof test campaign and it survives probably at least one static fire before they put the nose cone on, that would be pretty cool if they get far enough to put a nose cone on top of a Starship at the launch site. That would be super exciting, because that nose cone is almost the height of the Starship tank section you're looking at right now. So the Starship will almost double in height when that nose cone is installed. It is going to be super tall. And of course, a super heavy first stage, which will one day be stacked underneath a Starship vehicle. Well, the Starship will be stacked on top of the super heavy. I should have said it that way. But eventually, the full stack variant of this is going to be so tall. It's hard to even put into perspective how tall a fully stacked super heavy Starship is going to look on the pad. It's going to be ridiculous. You're looking at a very small section of the overall stack right now. Babinski asked, are the fins for SN9 on site and being installed? I'm not sure we've seen the fins installed yet, but I believe we have seen them delivered. I will ask Mary in our back channel if she has seen SN9 fins. But I believe we have. I'll get back to you if Mary knows the answer. But certainly SN9 is completely stacked other than fins right now, I think, in the mid-bay. SN10, all the major components for it have been spotted. And we have seen SN11 assembly already underway. And I think we've even seen some SN12 parts. Or if we have not seen them, we can presume that SN12 was under construction. So at least 4 more starships coming along quickly. And Mary does confirm that she believes the fins for SN9 are on site. So there you go. But I mean, obviously the SN8 test flight to 15 kilometers is going to have a good amount of risk, high chance of failure. But even if they totally lose SN8, which hopefully they don't, but if they do, it's not going to be that big a deal, assuming they don't like destroy the launch pad. I mean, the main thing with the SN8 flight is just don't destroy the ground infrastructure. If they destroy the pad infrastructure, with that tank farm we're looking at right now, that would be an extended delay. That's going to take several months to repair. But as long as they don't cause damage to the launch site, or they don't cause significant damage to the launch site, they have plenty of starships under construction. So hopefully, if SN8 has a problem, it lands somewhere, out at sea, because this is being launched right next to the ocean. So presumably, they might pitch over and head out to sea as they gain altitude. So hopefully, if SN8 does have an anomaly, it doesn't cause significant damage. But no matter what, they have starships lined up ready to go. Nesselman, thank you for the kind words. Yes, it is very hard to be up this late every single night broadcasting this. But it's super cool, so we're going to do it because we want to see the progress. And I mean, in my opinion, it's a lot more satisfying to see the final product happen when he followed it every step of the way. It's super cool to see the failures and the successes that all add up to get to the final state, which hopefully we'll end up seeing Starship-like vehicles launching people back to the moon and Mars. That would be pretty cool, obviously. So I think it's worth the effort to stay up to see this happen. Cool Logan, $2. Woohoo, let's get frosty. I agree. And speaking of frost, it's continuing to rise. You can also see some condensation forming at the top of the liquid oxygen tank, sort of where it meets the methane tank. We saw that last night too. It was kind of interesting. We saw some frost forming at the top of the liquid oxygen tank, which is kind of counterintuitive. You'd think the frost would only form there once the tank is filled, but for whatever reason, we had a big gap in the frost. There was a frost ring at the bottom and a frost ring on top for the liquid oxygen tank last night for quite a while before it eventually entirely frosted over. So not sure why that happened, given that the liquid nitrogen obviously rises from the bottom to the top and it fills up. So interesting that the frost did not follow that same pattern last night, but we'll see what happens today. Jerry, thank you for the membership. Go more. Have you guys ever shot a time lapse of the frost? Yes. If you go back on our YouTube channel and search for Cryogenic Proof Test, we have lots of videos that we've edited together from Mary. She has cameras rolling all the time, and our editors take that footage and produce time lapses. So go check our channel. We definitely have frost time lapses. But it sounds like another person has joined the channel. Is that person ready to help save my voice from dying tonight?
Yeah, but I'm not too sure how long I'll be able to cope with this time of the day. It's currently...
Wait, Chris, stop. You are blowing out. You are very loud.
Am I very loud?
extremely loud.
Wow, I don't know why. I'm on the same setup as I normally am. Can anyone manually turn me down, or do I have to
Yep,
just talk
I
really
got it.
quietly?
1 second.
Well, that might have woken you all up.
Okay, let's see what chat says.
Right. How do I
Okay,
sound now?
talk more.
Am I sounding like I'm a booming voice, or am I sounding more listenable? I'll
Give
take
us an audio check on Chris, please, chat.
Do what?
I asked them to give you an audio check in chat.
Oh, right. Sorry. I thought you
Yeah,
asked me.
okay. Chat says you're good.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
you're saying better.
right.
You're good.
Great. So where are we? Oh, we're at the Starship SN8 again, aren't we? And it's doing a cryo test again. We all thought it was going to do one cryo test, and we're all thinking, right, we'll get out of the way. We know they can do that. We know there's no problem with these tests because they've gone through it before. And all of a sudden, Elon says there was a leak. They're going to have to repair it and do it again. We thought, fair enough. They'll repair it. They'll do it again. We had a test last night, and it seemed to go really well. I got to the point where I was so convinced it had gone well. I did my thing where I sell my soul and did that Elon Musk, asking him how the test went, because I was fully expecting him to reply, oh, yes, it all went fine. We're all happy with how it went. And now, boys and girls, you can look forward to everything coming next, which will be 3 Raptors, a nurse cone, and a test flight to 50,000 feet. But no, there was silence. I thought, fair enough. I've got no God's given right for him to reply to me. Then Tim asked a question on my tweet, which is brilliant of Tim because it helps us, but it also doubles up on the question. And he still didn't answer it. So we thought, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And then suddenly we find out there's roadblocks again, and they're going to do a cryo test again. So something must not have gone right. I say that with a modicum of sensibility because obviously it didn't blow up or anything like that. But something wasn't right last night. They're doing it again. This is the 3rd test. Now, if this test goes well, great. It's had 3 cryo cycles. It's being, put through the test, and it's obviously going to benefit it in the long run. But the big question is when they will convince themselves that they are past this stage of testing, because once that is done, it gets rather exciting because we're going to go through the first time. We're going to see 3 Raptors installed on Starship SN8, on any Starship, in fact. It'll be the first time 3 Raptors have fired together in any situation. Even McGregor doesn't fire 3 Raptors together. They fire them individually on the test stands. So that'll be a first. Then we should see the nurse cone. There's some confusion whether the nurse cone will go on first, then the Raptors, but we'll see what happens. But if we get to that stage, we'll see a Starship that looks like the Starships in the renders, which is where it gets really exciting because up until now, we've seen water towers, we've seen grain silos, but next we'll see a Starship that looks like a Starship. And that will really capture the rest of the public imagination. We know there's a lot of interest already in this, but the floating public who tend to pass by pictures of what you might be seeing right now and thinking, it's a big silver thing and it doesn't look that interesting to me. As soon as I start seeing these fins and fairings and nose cones and flaps and everything looking like some futuristic starship, then they'll start taking notice. And I think that's when it'll really capture the public imagination. So that's what I'm looking forward to. As a journalist, I'm kind of like always sidely interested in what the public think and how the public can get interested into spaceflight and how they can, like all us in here tonight, which are all probably hardcore, would start getting into rockets because that's beneficial to everybody. That's something of interest, and especially this year. This year's been rubbish for everybody. Something bright, something positive, something interesting, something fun, something really futuristic just takes away a lot of that, monotony of what we see in the news every single day. So that's why I get really kind of like excited about the sideline public getting off the bench and getting involved and get interested in asking questions. Now, I tell you what, guys, if you get a tweet from someone who's never been into rockets and they ask you a very stupid question, don't treat it as a stupid question. Just treat it as new interest and just educate them a little bit. Because that is the saying is there's no such thing as a bad question. It's always something you can get someone into. I remember when I first got into spaceflight, which was shuttle, it won't surprise anybody. I thought the shuttle was talking at T-minus 31 seconds when it went go for a sequence start because it was a woman's voice. And for some reason, the first question I ever asked on the internet many, many, many years ago was, is that the shuttle talking? And of course, it's not. It's a ground launch sequencer controller in the launch control center. But again, imagine if I'd been shot down on that question. So like, you stupid idiot. Of course it's not. I might never have got interested in what I'm doing now. So if you get a question on Twitter from somebody who might seem like a stupid question, just answer it sensibly. Just tell them what it is. And you might get them interested. And you never know. In about 10 years' time, they might be running a live stream and talking on it like this. So that's what I always say. Meanwhile, back in Boca Chica, before I talk on too long about sideline things, we're waiting for this frost line to, because we've got an idea now what to expect. We know the events. We know events from the LOX tank and from the methane tank, all with liquid hydrogen, of course. But there's always a good chance that we're waiting for this frost line to ride up the side of the Starship. So that's what we're looking for now. Right now, it's at that stage where I think I'm trying to look back on last night's video. That's quite a big event. We're looking back on last night's video where it does this for a while, and suddenly the frost starts rising quite fast. So we're looking for that next. And hopefully we'll get close to that fully frosty Starship where we know they're in the business end of the test. And we'll be expecting to see the vents like we saw last night, which it gets very venty. Again, a lot of it's to do with that, the conditions in the local area. We know it's quite windy tonight, so I don't know how much we'll see. But hopefully we'll start seeing some serious action. And hopefully when it starts to defrost again, we might get a tweet from Elon himself saying it's past cryo-proofing, and then we can move on to the next stage. So that's what we're waiting for right now, because it is frosted up. It's a frost line, but it's not anywhere close to what it will be when it's at the proper end of the testing, when it's properly fully fueled up. So we're just hoping we get to that stage. And hopefully we don't get another road closure tomorrow night where it says we're going to do cryo test 4, because we don't want to hear that. I think everybody's had quite enough of that right now. I think we've had our fill of cryo testing for this Starship, and hopefully we can move on from there. Now then, let's see if we've got some questions, because I'm using Michael's very fancy app here, and I'm just wondering if I can work this out.
Well, here's a good question.
Oh, go on then.
Where is the accent from?
Yorkshire, which is the north of England, which is the middle of the UK. Now, people who are from Yorkshire, there won't be anyone awake. It's only me awake in Yorkshire right now. Would tell you there's different parts of Yorkshire, different accents. West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, East Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, all different accents, along the same kind of theme, of course. But I'm from North Yorkshire. That's an easy question. Got any more easy questions like that? I see one here from Jack Bayer. At NASASpaceflight, is cheesecake a pie or a cake? It's a pie, as far as I'm concerned. It might be controversial. We might blow up chat right now. Let's see. If I take that, well, yeah, it goes away. There we go. Michael's got this great little backroom thing where we can catch up with the chats rather than having to scroll backwards and forwards on the YouTube chat thing, and we can just get some questions from there. Did we thank all the super chats so far? We've got Ghostling in here. 14 minutes ago, I did $9.99, which is very much appreciated. If you saw it earlier, we did a live stream of the return of the booster which did the Starlink launch on drone ship into Port Canaveral. And we had a little surprise for you all there, where we showed one of our new cameras, which is a permanent fixture, and it's a robotic camera, which is now the new Port Fleet Cam, which is a great thing. There we go. There was a question right there. Ken Wayner for Boca Chica, Fleet Cam, so Mary can get some rest. Mary's the best. Yeah, that'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? We had that kind of setup as well. That Fleet Cam is going to be great fun for a lot of people. It's not just the ships going backwards and forwards and the SpaceX fleet. It also can take views of several launch pads, which will help us on things like rockets on the pad, static fire tests, things like that. And even filmed some launches for a certain part of the ascent. So that camera is going to be a lot of fun. And we're testing it out tonight. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think there has been discussion about, how we could integrate a fleet cam like setup with Mary's car. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. No promises, but we'll see what happens. But it would be amazing if we had a robot assistant for Mary.
Yeah, we could buy our own Zeus. If we get 5,000 super chats in the next 10 minutes, we'll buy our own Zeus from Boston Dynamics. We'll stick a camera on its head, and we'll have Mary train it and take it for walks. Mary can just leave it to do. Once it's trained up, Mary can just leave it on with the camera pointed at starships, and she can get some rest. Which would be the first time in a long time. But yeah, so I just mentally pictured that, which was more fun than it probably sounded. So, not GC Matt, just Arnie says, when will will the Starships go up in their current status, or will they get a Falcon-like exterior for actual space flights? Do you mean TPS? Because we know they're going to get thermal protection system. God, I'm still half asleep. Thermal protection system, but not for this test flight, at least we don't think. We're looking for the orbital flights, or at least ones which will go higher, a lot higher, where they need that heat protection of re-entry. So we do know they're going to be going with TPS because they've done test samples on previous Starships. They've done that test ring with an X of TPS. And they've also got lots of TPS attach points on the sections they're building right now. So we do know that's in the future. But for Starship SN8, that's going to be a 50,000 feet test launch. And the main purpose of this test launch is the aerodynamics of it, the aero surfaces, not just the 3 Raptors as well. Of course, that's the main thing. It's got to get off the launch mount with 3 Raptors. And then it's got to do its return and try for a landing. I will caution people who are looking forward to this to expect failure, because once you expect failure, it's not too much of a downer when it happens. And you've got to remember that SpaceX had so many Falcon 9s come back on the drone ships and didn't make it back. And they made a fun video of it because they expected that. They had to learn a lot of new things with those landings. That will feed in to Starship, and that's why the 2 hops have gone quite well. Very well, I should say, to the point they've been retired. We expected several more hops. But this, again, if this thing launches, comes back in a controlled way, and maybe falls over on landing, not such a terrible thing, because that'll be a lot of milestones already achieved in that kind of environment where it just doesn't nail landing. If it lands and it all goes well, that'd be a hell of a thing. And that really, to me, is asking quite a lot for the first time this sort of thing's ever been done. They can model things in computer, fluid dynamics and whatever. They can test things on the computers, but they've got to do real flight experience. And that's what this Starship's going to be doing for the first time. And to the point they realized they could lose this Starship in that test, they've got SN9, SN10, SN11 closely behind. SN9 is pretty much built. SN10 has been assembled now and ready for stacking in the mid-bay. And SN11, we know there's parts for it. There's even a leg skirt for SN12. So they've got all these Starships ready to go behind it in case of a failure with SN8. So don't be too downhearted if that fails. Now compare that with SLS, which I don't hate. And I know a lot of people don't like it. I know a lot of people have got valid concerns about the cost and the schedule and the launch cadence. As a shuttle hugger myself, I'm naturally affiliated with the RS-25s, the solid rocket boosters, the tankage. It's all stuff that's familiar to me. So there's a familiarity for me, that where I still kind of admire the rocket itself, because I think it'll be a good rocket. It's just overpriced and it won't launch anywhere near as much as it should be, and it's not reusable. So it's got a lot of things against it, and I understand the hatred, shall we say, against SLS. But if SLS has a problem with the green run, where they fire up the 4 RS-25 engines, and something leaks and something blows, something pops, something gives way, where they lose that vehicle on the test mount, then it's going to be 2 years before they get to the same kind of stance with all the investigations, all the corrective actions, and then getting the next core stage, which is still being built in Mashoud, ready to go and do that test fire again. That's how critical their testing is compared to Starship. Starship can fail and they'll be ready to go again within weeks. If SLS fails during testing, it's years. So that is where there's so much benefits behind this kind of test campaign, where they have several vehicles ready to go in the event they lose one of the vehicles. So that's why I always bring that up. And thanks to Bass Boylong for $4.20. Very much appreciated. And I do believe that was that question about it would be a miracle if this thing lands right. It wouldn't be a miracle. A miracle is something where something a lot more than rockets related, shall we say. But again, it'd be a massive achievement to land this one the first time round. I keep pausing because I want to be positive about this, and there's every reason to be positive about it, but you've got to have, with experience, the realization you could lose a vehicle and it won't be such a disaster. That's the thing I'm trying to get across, that as long as it achieves some milestones, it will be a progression along the path. It'll be a positive thing. It won't be, as some of the headlines in some of the media, which likes to write anti-SpaceX media headlines, a disaster for SpaceX, their vehicle blows up or anything like that because it lands wrong. That's what you got to protect yourself against. That's some of that lack of understanding or motive in the media, in some parts of the media, where they don't appreciate what a test program involves, where it does involve failure, and that failure then feeds into the successes in the future. That's why these Falcon 9s are landing on drone ships with success, is because of the failures they had in the early days with Falcon 9. So that's the main thing to get across there. It wouldn't be a miracle, it'd be a superb achievement. Let's put it that way. Let's look at these questions. Now I'm going to catch up possibly with ones which have been answered already, but I'm going to take them so I can tick them off the list. Evan Brandstad asks, is it possible that for Lunar Starship, they will use the Super Draco to land and ascend away? They don't have to make any new engines. Right. You know what? We've had some confusion with the HLS version of Starship, because the first render that came out, it showed two beams coming from the side, which looked like ACS thrusters, but also looked like floodlights. I think Tim asked a question on Twitter. He wasn't too sure which they were they engines or lights. I don't know if he came to a conclusion himself, and I'm not entirely sure if Elon answered that question from memory.
Hey, Chris.
But, yeah.
I think he did. I think
Did he?
Elon
All right, good.
answered and said that they were Methalox Raptor-derived thrusters. So not quite like Draco, but might be similar to Draco, but Methalox, unlike, and Raptor-derived. If I'm remembering correctly, I could be misremembering, but yeah, just wanted to pop in.
Yeah, no, good, because I remember Tim asking the question, and I just can't remember if anyone answered it. Especially, well, the only person who can answer it really is Elon, isn't it? So I can't remember if Elon did answer that. But yeah, thanks, Jack. Yeah, I appreciate that. Right, and we've got a question from HG Plays, who asks, what is the reason for the third cryo test? I thought they'd only do 2. We only thought they'd do 1. That was originally the plan, at least as far as we assumed it was the plan. Because the roadblocks were all based on a primary date with backups. And the backups are in case there's a delay, or there's a weather delay, or there's a problem with loading or whatever. The idea was 1 test. Now, that 1 test had a leak, and Elon did say on Twitter, he said there was a leak and they'll fix it and retest. It was only a minor leak, obviously. And it did cryo quite well. It did obviously load quite a lot of NH2. So it was liquid nitrogen, I should say, rather than trying to pronounce the initials. It was... it seemed to go well, but they had leaked. They did it again last night, where it looked like it went well. But yeah, they're doing it again. So obviously they're still not happy with what they want. They want certain results, and they've not got them yet. Obviously, we're not privy to the results that they're getting live or how it's going until Elon himself, which he doesn't have to, not for every single milestone, tweet something saying, yeah, we're past that milestone. Now we can move on to the next thing. So that's where they are. We thought they'd do 1, not 2. So 3 is a surprise. Flying the Bug 35. I'm just going to read these live before I even vet the questions, so don't ask any silly questions. Can they do an isolated CH4 test without filling the LOX tanks? Oh, now then, guys, if anyone else is on mic, I do remember the doof. I'm sure they fill Starship when it gets to the liquid methane and liquid oxygen was it methane first, or is it LOX first? So they could do a test with just the 1. I know they've got to do both for the Raptor, obviously, but for just a cryo kind of test, or just a fueling test, I'm sure they could. Yeah, in fact, I'm positive they could. I'm trying to think back if they actually did that before. I don't know what the purpose would be, unless it was just to see how each tankage performs. But yeah, it is. There's 2 tankages, obviously the liquid methane and obviously liquid oxygen, and they could technically do one or the other.
I think they need enough pressure in the LOX tank to at least hold structural integrity. Because if you remember that, I think it was the SN3 failure where the methane tank was fully loaded or more loaded than the LOX was, and it caused the vehicle to have a structural failure where it sort of crumple popped. That was because the LOX detanked and unloaded. They called it a ground support issue or a testing flow issue, something like that, where basically that LOX tank, maybe they would be able to test the CH4 tank, the methane tank by itself, but they would at least need some minimum amount of pressure in the LOX, right?
Yeah. I keep thinking of stiffness, and I keep thinking of ullage gas, which would work. But again, you'd be going through the fueling process to get through to that point. So yeah, I totally understand what you mean by that, Jack. Kevin Frentas asks, any reason for the coloured lights on Hopper? Just aesthetic? No, I do believe Hopper's got quite a few roles now, because originally the story behind Hopper was once they retired her from the Hops, which was obviously a great milestone and something that makes Hopper beloved in the eyes of all SpaceX fans. They were originally looking at probably making her a Raptor test stand. That's what Elon suggested was the first idea, and that would be a reasonably good idea because they're going to need a lot of Raptors, and right now they've only got 2 bays on the horizontal at McGregor and 1 bay on the vertical, which is the tripod stand at McGregor. So more test stands makes sense. Then they scrapped that plan, and Hopper was shoved to the side of the road quite unceremoniously. And we're all thinking, right, fair enough, they're going to make her a lawn ornament, or even probably scrap her, especially when we saw people taking chunks of steel out the side of her at one point. But no, they've given her a role. They've put a weather radar on top of her head, as you can see spinning around, which is one of those where they can just get some more data from the conditions in the local area. They've got CCTV cameras all around pointing towards this Starship, which we'd love a feed. Elon, if you're listening in, Elon, can we have the clean feed to your CCTV cameras on Hopper? Thank you very much. And I'll buzz Daz and we'll get it fed in on different screens on here so you can all watch as well. That's never going to happen. We've also got alert systems. Now, the great thing is Mary caught Hopper speaking for the first time. And it did sound like Hopper was literally shouting at the workers, which was I personally found amusing. I am easily amused, to be fair. But they've got loudspeakers on Hopper now, so they can do things like pad. When there's like a pad situation where they want the workers to be aware of any dangers or any hazards, they can enunciate it over Hopper's speakers, which is great. The lights themselves, I do believe that a lot of it will be to do with the status of the pad. I'm trying to think, Jack. Can you maybe back me up on this
I think
one?
I think it's sea turtle related.
Oh, there we go.
The specific so there's two different sets of lights occurring on Starhopper right now, maybe 3. There's a white light, which is just pad lighting. There's a magenta spotlight, which if you know anything about SpaceX and anything about Elon, they love magenta spotlights. Even Elon tweeted recently something about Dragon reveal. We might have had too many magenta spotlights or something like that, which a little bit of self-awareness there. But so there's the magenta and the white light covered, but specifically that red light, I believe, is a sea turtle friendly or sea turtle abatement type device. But I'm not 100% sure there.
Well, there we go. You see, it's not. I'm not going to name the site, but there's a certain site that just loves writing negative stories about SpaceX. They'll never write that. They'll never say, "Oh, SpaceX is thinking about sea turtles." They'll never mention that. So yeah, that's great. And the other thing is they're using it as like a shelter, like a shelter for people having picnic breaks during the lunch hour. There's a great picture. I'll try and find it, but it'll take me forever. But there's a great night photograph. There's about 3 or 4 workers on a picnic bench, just taking a break from doing their pad work under Hopper, which is just great. Hopper's like providing them some kind of shelter. I personally love that because that just giving Hopper several different things and completely different jobs to do, and keeping Hopper in the public's eye as such. Now, let's check these questions here. Oh, there's a good a question I won't be able to answer, but I'll read it out anyway. Significant Scaloro asks, if you could visit anywhere in our solar system for 1 week, where would you go? Where would you want to go? Oh, you know what? I tell you what, Mars, because it's just I'd like to go there and visit there for a week when there's a base there. I don't know if I'll live to see the day where they've got that Mars base Alpha, which the SpaceX put out in renders, because that place looks amazing. If they ever achieve such a thing, I think we're so far away from it though, because the amount of logistics needed to build such a large base, but just a small base. I just like the idea of going somewhere where you could stay and not basically, be like a one-way round trip sort of thing. So I'd still say Mars, just because that seems more realistic, shall we say? I mean, I'm sure some of the more ambitious people in this group would be thinking somewhere very fanciful like Europa or whatever. But no, I'd say Mars personally. Question from Evan again. Evan Badstad asks, how much money would you think the early starships cost? We haven't got a clue. I really don't know. I do know it's quite a lot of money. I think some people have estimated it. I think Elon might have even mentioned a dollar figure at some point. But it's all on SpaceX's dime. And that's the important thing to remember. They have got contracts. Well, they've got the HLS contracts as far as Starship goes on the lunar side. But that'll be pocket change compared to what they spent to build Boca Chica's test site and production site and to buying all the machinery to build these starships. So I think it'd be quite a lot of money, but it's money they think is viable, because if it does all work out, it'll more than pay for itself via the fact of rapid reusability. Rapid reusability is the model that makes money in spaceflight now. And that's why all these other nations, in fact, are looking at reusability, because they've seen it work now. And this is all after many, many decades of people thinking it doesn't work. I mean, sure, the shuttle was reusable by nature, but they still threw away the external tank, and the turnaround of a shuttle orbiter was in the months rather than the days and weeks, which they originally envisioned them to be. So there was no real financial viability in the reusability of shuttle. They're talking about turning them around in an hour. I think Elon mentioned in a tweet today. That's what, that changes everything. And especially if they can get point-to-point working, which again is questionable, but something like that, I just think it'd be a complete change. It would just change everything. And these vehicles have got such capability as well. We're not talking about Electron class vehicles that can land and be reused like Peter Beck's aiming to do, which would be great for his business model, sure, and for small sat launches, but these are super heavy launch vehicles. These are real game changers, and they're reusable, and they're rapidly reusable. So I think whatever dollar figure they put on it, they've estimated it's worth it, and if it's viable, they'll make their money back. So yeah, I'm thinking less about the dollar figure and more about the viability of it, and I think it's very viable. A question from Nathaniel asks, when they make the new test tank for the 304L stainless steel, will it be called SN7.2? Well, 7.1 was that test tank. It was 304L, but it wasn't fully 304L. That was a big surprise from what Elon said. We all assumed 7.1 was completely 304L, but he then said there was parts which were still 301, and that's where the failure point was before it got over to a certain bar pressure. So it didn't fail as such. It was pushed to push the destruction on purpose. But they were hoping for, I get the impression they were hoping for a higher bar rating from this test tank. So that then gives you the idea they might go for a 7.2 and make that completely out of 304L. And the question being, will it be called 7.2? I think that's a fair thing to say, because the two test tanks so far have been SN7, SN7.1, and well, for these latest test tanks, that is, so 7.2 makes sense. And I would assume that will be made from 304L completely. So if you've got any more questions, at NASASpaceflight, and then ask them, because either my queue is broken, it is broken because I've seen questions when I scroll up. When I press refresh, I get no questions. When Michael comes back from the bathroom. Let me scroll back up and see if I miss any. Yeah, Polar Bear says that Gizmo on top of Hoppy is a sweep radar device. Garmin, isn't it? I believe it's a Garmin device. So that's what they've installed on top of Hopper. Dougal asks, Dougal, one of our mods, what part of the NASA contract pays for Starship development? Nothing technically, other than NASA has put some money into the human landing system with Blue Origin national effort and whatever, and Starship's involved in that. It's not mega money. It's basically progress your design and proposals forward before the down select. So the big money is when you win the down select. That's what happened with the commercial crew contracts. They had the three winning the early stages had seed money, and the likes of RPK with their vehicle were not selected past one of the early stages, and they literally went bust. So they put all the money all the money they got from NASA into their program. SpaceX are in no risk of that, obviously, because they've got several different businesses going on, and nothing's obliged to the contracts they've got for HLS. But with commercial crew, we saw how devastating it can be to lose a contract when you're a smaller company, where the SNC Dream Chaser, the Crew Dream Chaser, failed to win through to CCT Cap, which was the final stage, the down select, which was awarded to Boeing and SpaceX for the two commercial crew vehicles, Dragon 2, Crew Dragon as we know it now, and Starliner. So when commercial crew down selected Crew Dream Chaser, they literally the next day fired 50 staff, and that completely killed any chance of them winning through, winning back some kind of thing. With Starliner having so many problems, people said when Starliner had so many problems, why didn't just go back to SNC and say, well, let's push forward Crew Dream Chaser and get back on track? Too late. They basically killed the program off. They've now got the Cargo Dream Chaser, but it's a much smaller program, and it's obviously not crew rated, and that is proceeding along on its own merits with its own contract, with the CRS2 contract. So the amount of money involved with NASA and Starship is minimal, and it's all to do with that early pre-down select money from HLS into the program. Eric, he's got his username on here, but it's Eric Ralph. He's asking, and Shuttle would wound up cost more than Saturn V per launch. Yeah, it would. The thing with Shuttle is that they had a year funding of about $4.5 billion a year. Now that money was paid regardless if it launched 12 times that year or once that year. It was always 4.5 or around that figure, and that was a running cost because it's what's called a standing army. If you only launch one shuttle launch a year, you're still paying, 5,000 employees all through the year. You don't stand them down for between launches. You keep them employed. So that was a problem with such a vehicle and such a program, is what's called a standing army. And guess what? That's what SLS has. SLS has got thousands of full-time employees, and they will be paid at the end of every month, regardless of when SLS launches, regardless of how many times SLS launches. So that's where you get problems with these big government-run contracts where they're paying the likes of NASASpaceflight, in the case of Shuttle, a lot of money to have all your employees working through the year, regardless of how many launches you do. So that's what we're trying to sort of shed off now with this commercial partnership that NASA's working with now, which is working a treat. It's probably one of the biggest steps forward NASA's achieved by moving towards the commercialization of spaceflight, where they're a service buyer rather than the actual agency that builds the rockets. SLS is, I guarantee you, the last launch vehicle that a Marshall Space Flight Center will design and build. It is the last one. Everything past SLS now will be assigned to bidding rights for contractors from commercial companies, and they will then submit their bids, and NASA will select the best ones to buy services from. That's the model now. I can't see it ever changing back. Now. I've got a question from Sorry W, who asks, will first high altitude test of Super Heavy use some kind of aerodynamic nose cone? Ooh, no then. Well, first of all, we know that the first Super Heavy to launch will be the prototype, the SN8, as they're calling it. Well, not SpaceX, but people following the sections being built, like Brandon, that will only be a 150-meter hop. It won't need a nose cone. It'll be like an SM5, SN6 test. It'll be just a hop, as we've seen before, but ridiculously larger. It'll be quite hilarious to watch because these vehicles we're looking at right now are quite tall. They really are quite big vehicles. For a super heavy booster, the prototype with 2 Raptors hopping 150 meters will be surreal. So that'll be funny. I think once you get passed into this kind of SN8 kind of regime of testing with a super heavy, will it launch to 100? No, I think it'll go orbital. I think they'll have to go for that because that's the whole point of the booster. This SN8 test to 50,000 feet is about the aerosurfaces for Starships. So I really do think when we get into the super heavy launches past 150 meter hop, I think they will be looking for a full up vehicle to properly launch. I have no idea what they'll target, but I think once they're doing that 150 meter hop, they'll then advance to the large altitude hops. That's what I personally think will happen. Now we've got some more questions in the question queue, which I can now read off. Andrew Carmel, who's probably paid so much money in super chats, I feel embarrassed not to read his question out first, asks, hey Chris, how mad would you get if I helped with some more cams for L2's PayPal? No, don't. You've paid way too much support as it is, and any future support we'll talk and we'll do something special for you because you've done far too much as it is already, and I insist on that. So you're in our Discord, which is for members of Capcom and above. I will DM you in there and we'll have a chat because I don't want you to do anything more in this as you've done so much in the past already. So yeah, I kind of insist on that. David Knight asks, when do you think Elon plans to do what do you think Elon plans to do if he doesn't want a flame diverter in Boca? You know, when he tweeted that, we're all like, what? Because there'd be so much debris flying everywhere without a flame deflector. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, he did preface, he did say at the end, maybe a mistake. I don't know if he was either teasing us or if that's basically a plan for accelerating the launch, so they don't have to build something extra. But yeah, I personally would hope and expect they do go for a flame deflector at some point. We'll see. Again, Elon runs as fast as his mind runs, and his mind runs really fast because he's when you hear him talk, you can always see his brain working at 100,000 miles an hour, and that's why he's a clever guy. So whether he treated that just as a fast thing or if that's the actual plan, we'll don't know. We'll find out. We'll see what's going on. Marius Weiss asks, what do you guys think about Russia's new AMUR Baby Falcon 9 rocket that they're proposing? It's not brilliant. It looks like someone stole the plans, and I watched a few webcasts from more like and said, right, landing legs look like this, grid fins look like this. We'll stick a fairing on it and put some payloads in it and try and land it. But as Elon did say in reply to it, when I think Eric Berger tweeted it out, it did come across as something that hasn't got a lot of capability. And Elon did make a point of that. You need capability for it to be viable. So I don't know. Russia's got so many projects going, it's ridiculous. They were talking about a reusable space plane again last night, which is brand new. They're spreading themselves so thin, they'll never get anything done. They haven't got a massive budget. We know that for a fact. Their costs are cheaper, so they can do a lot more with a lot less money. But I think when you spread your program so thin, you end up with cancelled projects. And that's where the more ambitious projects, such as Brand 2, and possibly as a reusable vehicle that you've suggested in the question there, may just get on the sidelines and they'll go back to their bread and butter launches of Soyuz launches and Angara, if Angara survives, because they've only launched that so many times already as it is. But that's what the new launch site's all about. So we'll see how Angara does. But they're spreading some so thin. I wonder if a lot of it is just bluster for the press, especially with the guy in charge of their agency, the way he acts, without getting too controversial. Michael Garrick Zach asks, Boca Chica is where Starship and Super Heavy are being developed now, where Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon are being manufactured developed. They are built in Hawthorne, California. Now, we used to watch lots of tweeted photographs from SpaceX showing lines of boosters in Hawthorne, all lined up, ready to get their octawebs and their engines, ready for shipping out to McGregor. In this age of successful reusability, they are literally rotating quite a lot of flight-proven boosters, where they don't need to build so many new boosters. The new boosters we've seen rarely now are mainly on customer demands, which I'm sure is going away, such as even the US Air Force is not too bothered about reusable rockets now from the sound of things. So they are rotating their landed rockets, and it's very rare now you see a brand new Falcon 9 like for the GPS launch. So, and the irony is the flight-proven boosters seem to be performing without any problems at all, whereas a brand new one for GPS has had a problem. So you never know. Flight-proven might be the way to go, where they can literally call it flight-proven because they can show it worked before it worked again. So they haven't got a host of them in Hawthorne, but also Crew Dragon is what's called a hatchery in Hawthorne. That's a special building for all the dragons. We saw it when Jim Bridenstine went down there to have a little chat with Elon live on NASA TV. And they were outside a hatchery, and they showed them working on Crew Dragon 1, which was the one which is now launched and landed. And that showed a hatchery quite close up, where they literally build the dragons in there, then ship them off to KSC. I'm just quickly checking in on Starship rather than just reading these questions out. And so far, we've not really seen much action, have we? We've still got that ring of frost. I'm looking higher up the vehicle to where one of the vent points are. That literally looks like it's been a cause of the venting rather than any more extra new frosting. So I don't believe we've seen much happening just yet. Hopefully it'll pick up soon. Obviously, a lot of activity from the aft. We saw that again last night. So that's nothing unusual. But we are waiting until we start seeing those frost lines really right up, because we do know that from experience with previous tests, such as last night, the whole vehicle frosts up and we get literally like a penguin suit for Starship. We've not seen that yet, so yeah. Colin Reed asks, was there any issues with the cryogenic proof test that they did last night? Why are they doing it again tonight? I think I answered your own question. Before I say any more, we are now, Starship SN8 must have heard me, because we are now seeing some extra frost. It really is picking up now around the middle. So that is now fueling, by the looks of things, properly. So we'll keep a close eye on that frost line. But that advanced within the last few minutes. I'm going to just scroll back. Yep, that's literally the last minute that's happened. So we're moving forward. To answer the question, we don't know what went wrong last night to cause this third test. It looked pretty good visually, but Elon's not said anything. We just know they're doing it again. So something wasn't quite right. Hopefully tonight will be the last cryo-proofing test. Alex Griffiths asks, have there been any Raptors spotted on site other than the ones we've seen the other day? The one we saw the other day was probably SN29 going back to McGregor after its hop with SN6. That's what, if you're talking about the one in Mary's video. As far as the Raptors for SN8, we expect them to 3 new Raptors, but we've not seen them yet. I can guarantee you, if there's a Raptor on a truck, Mary will find it. she always finds Raptors on trucks. So we'll keep an eye out for it. Obviously, that will be coming up very soon, providing this test goes well. So hopefully, we will start seeing some Raptors, and hopefully they'll have some numbers paid on them so we'll be able to know which Raptors they are. But that's usually what happens. But I guarantee you, if there's a Raptor on a flatbed truck in Boca Chica, it will not elude Mary in any way. It will not evade her. There's no chance of that happening at all.
Look at that frost, Chris.
I just mentioned that in the last few minutes, it's really picked up. So hopefully the whole vehicle will start frosting up properly now, and we can get into the larger venting cycles where we know they're in the business end of the test.
And interesting, just like last night, where we saw that ring form at the top of the liquid oxygen tank. which is kind of bizarre because you would assume the frost would rise like the liquid nitrogen does from top or from bottom to top instead of this starting at the top. Although I guess a little bit at the bottom, but it's mostly starting at the top right now. But
Yeah, definitely.
A couple of super chats. Space Hippo, $5. Hi, Space Hippo. Not UC Matt, just on €5. Would basically be a miracle if this thing lands, right? What do you think, Chris? Does it have a chance of landing?
I literally stepped away for a second while you started talking, so can you repeat the question? Which question was it?
They were saying, would it basically be a miracle if this thing lands?
Oh, no, that's it. We answered that one already. Again, I was pointing out, it wouldn't be a miracle. It would be a huge success. Because miracles are where something happens, something extraordinary happens, which is totally unexpected. They are expecting to land this thing. Let's face it, that's the whole point of the test. If they're expecting to not land it, they would do a flight profile where it just drops out to sea, like the early Falcon 9 landings, which were sea landings. So I don't think it'd be a miracle. I think it'd be a big success and a huge step forward, but not a disaster if it crashes. As long as they get some aerodynamics out of it, as long as they get some aerosurface action out of it, some controllability, the three Raptors performing well, the relight of the three Raptors, things like that. They're all test milestones and pushing forward.
You get the membership, Stuart?
Stuart Angus. No, I did not. I'm just looking at this left-hand side of this thing here. Stuart Angus, new member. Thanks very much. You joined as a padrat. Very much appreciated. Also, we got David L.
Chris, click the green button when you take a super chat or a question, please.
Will do.
That way I don't double up.
Shazam. There we go. Right, David L. with $2 Canadian, I think that is. Why are some nose cones being dismantled? Right, if you look back, I'm gonna put it into chat at the article I wrote on Sunday. 1 second. You'll see those nose cones in that area where one's been dismantled, lined up. And if you click on the photograph, 1 second, let's put the article in here first. Into chat. There we go. Let's get the right screen for a start. There we go. If you read the article, scroll down. Halfway, you'll see 4 nose cones. You'll see 5, in fact. You'll see Mark 1, which you can ignore. You'll see the 3 nose cones and the one in the windbreak. The one in the windbreak and the one on the right-hand side do not have the world line for the header tank. So they are not going to fly. And the one on the right-hand side is one's being dismantled right now. That is why it's been dismantled. It's literally a test pathfinder for construction. The two on the left-hand side both have that world line for the header tank. Doesn't mean they're going to fly, but it means they're the next step forward. And the nose cone that will go with SN8 will be one of those with a well line there. So that's why dismantling it is literally in the way. It was a pathfinder, and they're now just scrapping it. They don't need it. Howard Cluntz with $4.99. Thank you very much for your support. Do you think Blue Origin ULA will go full reusability like SpaceX in order to compete? Blue Origin are. We know that. New Glenn is designed to land on that ship, Stenner ship, which they're still converting. Their system is all designed at reusability because even New Shepard is reusable and lands. So there's no question about Blue Origin, and their brief is to make reusable rockets. And New Glenn is a very powerful rocket. If they ever get it sorted out where they can get a schedule where they're going to start launching New Glenn at a rate which can compete with SpaceX, it'll be interesting. But by then, Starship will be flying. And Blue Origin have only mentioned a new Armstrong vehicle as the nearest thing to compete. But I still don't think it's anything close to Starship. So I think they are going to reusability, but they're not going to go for they're not going to be able to compete until they're flying. Until they're flying, it's a moot point. ULA have got plans to fly back the engines, but that's not for full reusability, and that's a long way off yet. So I think ULA is quite happy with the contracts they're getting right now with their systems such as Vulcan in the future with Atlas 5, Delta 4 Heavy. Atlas 5 is retiring, of course, but not for a while. And the irony is that New Glenn and Vulcan both use the BE4 engine from Blue Origin, and we know the BE4 unofficially is having a lot of problems. So how soon they will get Vulcan and New Glenn flying is a big question. I'm sure it's problems they can't surmount. So it's a question of schedule rather than a question of redesigning the thing. But they are all both dependent on the same engine. And that'll be very interesting going forward because Raptor seems to be ahead of the game as far as testing goes because Raptor's flown. B4 has not flown. So we'll see how that works out for them. Stephen Stockett asked with 10 Canadian dollars, thank you very much. And I do say thank you very much, and I do mean it because this is exactly why we could do these things. This is not basically anyone. This is not just pointing a camera and webcasting it. This is bandwidth. There's a lot of cost involved with this. So you will let us do that and let us achieve it. If Michael stops pressing the green thing, I'll be able to read the question out.
Chris, you need to press the green button before you read the message.
Do I?
Yes.
Oh,
that
right.
works.
Well, I don't know what the question is now. So
if you click the green button, it will show up at the top center of your screen, and then you can read it. That means if it's at the top center, that means it's on an overlay, so your chat can see what we're reading.
Ah, there we go. What are the thoughts that SpaceX succeeds and Boeing fails in being the main go-to-launch solution for most space? Is that the rest of the question missing there?
It should be at the top center of your screen on the panel. Is it not?
Nope.
Send me a screenshot, please.
Will do. Anyway, so in
Here,
fact,
I'll read it for you.
I tell a lie. I see it now. What are the thoughts? This is way too early in the morning for me. I must tell you guys. What are the thoughts that SpaceX succeeds and Boeing fails in being the main go-to-launch solution for most space requirements? Well, what do you mean by Boeing? Is my first question. Are we talking about commercial crew here? Boeing is not a launch provider. Boeing is part of ULA with Lockheed Martin, and how they fail, I don't know. The question is no. The answer is no, because there is no kind of like Boeing failure where the SpaceX will succeed because of it. SpaceX will succeed in its own rights. It's got competitors all over the world. It's got competitors with Arianespace. It's got several ways of doing its own business without worrying about what anyone else is doing. And I guarantee ULA is not all that bothered either because they're getting their big contracts quite happily as it is and keeping their order books full. So yeah, I would say no to the question on that basis. Blake Parsons with $14.99 Australian dollars. Very much appreciate your support. We've got Deslerman 21 with $6.99 Canadian dollars. There's a strong wind. It might be frosty than we think because the wind might be blowing left and right. Yeah, that we've seen differences in the test 1 and test 2, and that will be playing to the facts that like last night was raining for a large point of the test program. So test window, I should say. So I do think we're going to be very wary of differences in how it'll appear. That frosting, which we saw around the middle, has now gone. We just got that ring again in the bottom of the aft near the flaps. So it has changed again. And we'll see what happens going forward as far as venting. We've not seen the venting for a while. Not that I've seen on the screen at least. So that'll be something to watch out for because this could go on for many hours yet. Probably will do since I just said that. And Lioness Footballs with $5. Thank you very much for your support. Very much appreciated. Let's look at these questions. Crown Duck asks, aluminium or aluminium? And he's on about the spelling there. It depends if you're from the United States or not. Basically, that is the simple answer to that question. Maria Neal, who's one of our writers, he asks, what do you think will be a down select, assuming NASA will choose only 2 landers? Yeah, I think I really want to see Starship win because it just looks the best. It have a lot of capability compared to some of the options. I think, you know what? I think if it's Starship and one of the other 2, I don't know. I wouldn't like to place the bets on it right now. I think Blue Origin's got quite a long way to go to convince NASA because they are only launching as far as launches have been succeeding. New Shepard to suborbital heights. They've got a lot to prove in the arena of spaceflight plus suborbital. The national effort has got a lot going on where they can basically say we're providing lots of jobs for people around the country, and NASA love that kind of thing. Yeah, it might be that. Yeah, you never know. Well, it depends, really. I personally I like the idea of Starship because we followed it so closely that I just hope that is one of the winners. Let's put it that way. We've answered that one about the nose cone. It basically was a structural test article. It was a Pathfinder. Jason Guy asks, how do you think the SN8 hops and static fires will play out? Raptor, 1 hop, 2 hop, or attach all 3 Raptors and rotate the static fires? I think they'll attach all 3 from the onset. They'll do some testing, maybe 1 or 2 static fires. We might see lots of non-static fires where they do spin prime tests, things like that, pre-burners. Because remember, this is the first time 3 Raptors have been involved together. So they might do quite a lot of testing before they actually fire them up. But I think Elon has said 2 static fire tests, 1 static fire, then review the data, another static fire, then do the flight test. So I think really it's wait and see. But I do personally think they'll install 3 Raptors in the first go. Jessica Mills asks, these first Starships are 9 meters. Do you think the future ones will be larger? They keep changing the design over recent years, not so much over recent months, apart from differences like 28 Raptors for Super Heavy instead of 31. So I think as far as the structural idea of Starship and Super Heavy is right now, I think they are at somewhere they're quite happy with. So I think they'll stick with that for now. Going forward, will they change things? Maybe. I don't know. But right now, I think they've coalesced, I think Elon said was, on design, where they're quite happy with what they've got right now. And it's all about testing this design now, testing it with flight. So I think that's where we are with that. Amir Dressel asks, is there any sign that SpaceX will make a space station? No, but that is interesting. And on a personal point, I kind of hoped that maybe Elon might have been slightly attracted to the currently mothballed Bigelow, because Bigelow Aerospace have got some amazing modules, which would be a superb kind of like orbital spot for a space station. Very much easy to assemble, easy to fly to with their capability. I think there'll be a lot of potential with that. But also, lesser known of Bigelow Aerospace is the modules that can be landed onto the surface of the moon. Well, indeed Mars, but the moon first. And, pardon me, I just think what Bigelow had already in the bank as far as habitats, both orbital in space and on the surface of the moon, were just so fantastic. I just hoped someone like SpaceX would have taken Robert Bigelow to one side and said, look, you've mothballed the program right now. We'll take you off your hands for X amount of dollars. You can be involved or whatever. And we'll take what you've done so far and take it forward. But we've not heard of SpaceX mention anything about a space station. I mean, Starship, technically, it's got such a large habitable volume that once it's flying in space, that's probably all they really need as far as flying, a large amount of volume in space rather than the volume created by the habitats on like the ISS, which is a lot more, but it's taken them decades to build a thing. So the answer is no, but I just babbled all a bit about what I hope happens with Bigelow, because I do hope someone, SpaceX or other, takes them forward. They had some brilliant ideas. Oh, a super chat from Philip Moyer with $10. Thank you very much. Oh, hey, the NSF is live again. Again. Here's my nightly for the funds cash. Thanks for the dedication. Very much appreciated. And I do appreciate dedication as well, because I guarantee you we're all tired, but that's nothing compared to the lack of sleep Mary's had. She's out there all day doing these telly videos and then all night doing this Starship testing. I do not know how she does it. I personally could not do it. So yeah, all praise to Mary. And it is without Mary, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't even be talking. So there you go. And we got a question from W. Sawyer. Seems like the first orbital test will require sea platform launch. Ah, yeah. So there may be a time limiting factor on how soon it can be done. Do you agree? How long to build the sea launch platform? Yeah. Now that's a fact. Elon has said they're not going to launch Super Heavy, the 28 engine at least, or even lesser engine, Super Heavy, from land. They've got the launch mount for the 2 Raptor test. They've got a launch mount which probably work for several Raptors, but not the Super Heavy we know are going to be launching orbital. That's going to launch from a platform in sea because that's required environmentally, never mind anything else. And how far away are they from that? Well, we don't know. We've had the shortfall of gravitas being mentioned for the last 2 years. We're not seeing a picture of it yet. So, although it's not recently. So, how long will it take to build a platform? Depends on how they're going to do it. Will they build it from scratch, or maybe take something else which already exists? I think that's wait and see. So we'll find out soon enough. But yeah, that is a limiting factor if that's their roadblock to building something. So we'll see what happens, but we'll go from there. One more question before I go off for a little bit, because this is getting close to where I have to go to work. This is not my job, would you believe? NASASpaceflight, thoughts on how SpaceX will lobby Starlink to other countries considering Starlink's close relationship to the US military? I think it's not really for SpaceX to lobby. It's for SpaceX to build a capability, and then for that capability to sell itself. And then they'll get to the questions of any geopolitical issues with such a system. But right now, Starlink is being launched as a deployable constellation, which they're not fully done yet. Then they'll be to test it with the public. They'll make it viable. They'll show it's viable. They'll keep launching more satellites. And hopefully, ironically, Starship will get involved, because Starship could launch maybe 4 times that of a Falcon 9 in one go. And that will really build a constellation. And before you know it, this constellation really sells itself and becomes something of a demand rather than a hindrance to other nations or whatever like that. As far as its role with the US military, I think it's just a platform they're using. They're not using Starlinks themselves. They're using a Starlink-like platform for that contract, which was mentioned recently. So, yeah, I don't think that's really an issue as such. Okay, I think Michael is back from his little short break to take over for a bit longer. So we'll take it away, Michael.
Thank you. So a quick update on Starship. Well, there's not much to update on, as you can see. We saw a bit of frost forming at the top part of the liquid oxygen tank for a bit. That frost has now disappeared, and that frost line towards the bottom of the liquid oxygen tank appears to be holding, but not seeing much change there. We did see this type of activity last night. The frost line kind of moved around a bit, but we didn't see much frosting until kind of a while into the test. So not quite sure why that is, but I still think the test is progressing. I don't think they've aborted it or something yet, although you never know, because we do not get any official updates from SpaceX, of course. And I'm rewinding. If you want to check the frost line, a good way to do that is to rewind your YouTube timeline about 5 minutes or so, and then skip back to live and see if you can tell if there are any changes on your screen. But I'm doing an A/B test right now, and it looks like there might be a little bit of growth in the center of the reflection. So hopefully the frost is going to start increasing some. But I think there is a little bit of growth on that bottom frost line over the past 2 minutes, which is good, because I want to get some sleep tonight. So hopefully this test will get going. Username. Thank you for the $5. Thank you for sharing your passion for spaceflight with us while continuing to work. Yeah, no problem. It is pretty demanding to do this while also trying to maintain a normal life with other responsibilities, but it's a lot of fun. So I think it's certainly worth doing. And I know you heard Chris B say that he was going off to work now, and I don't think he got much sleep tonight. I think he pretty much was up for our fleet stream, maybe got a couple of hours, and woke back up, helped out, and is now going straight to work. So lots of team members putting in a lot of work to make this happen. Blake with $8 Australian. Thank you so much, Blake. But again, if you have questions, keep asking in chat. Tag at NASASpaceflight if you have a question, and it will automatically put your question into our queue. I think we've gotten most of our questions. I have one from David Knight in the queue. I'm not sure if Chris got to this one, but do you think Elon plans to have SN8 ready for flight and SN9 or another SN fully stacked back in the yard to be the backdrop for the Starship update? I mean, I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, I think the super heavy high bay would probably be a likely candidate for the event, just based on its size, it's impressive in nature, and they could put some Starship prototypes in that high bay as backdrop. I guess perhaps they could maybe do it outdoors, especially if they want more space, given the COVID situation, but we'll have to see. We also had a pretty big discussion last night about whether or not we think SN8 will fly before or after the presentation. Because Elon recently tweeted it was only going to be about 3 weeks until the presentation. So with that kind of timeline, it seems like that might be cutting it close if they want SN8 to fly beforehand. But we'll see what happens. I'm going to do another check of the frost line. I think the progress that I saw seems to have gone down slightly, so I don't think I'm seeing much of an increase anymore. Still seems to be relatively holding here. Again, when we're getting to the business end of the test where they use those thrust rams inside the base of or at the base of the launch stand to simulate the forces of the Raptor engines, Starship's tanks, the liquid oxygen tank and the methane tank, will be completely covered in frost. So that little bit of frost you see on the bottom portion of the liquid oxygen tank should rise all the way to the top of the Starship pretty much. So still a lot of frosting to go before we know it's the business end of this test. And it looks like the frost is rising again. If you look, there's that brighter reflection sort of on the right-hand center. So the brightest part of the center portion of Starship with that reflection. If you rewind a bit, you can see there's actually frost growing. It's hard to tell because it looks like it's just a reflection, but some of that is actually new frost that's forming. So that seems to be potentially a good sign, but we have seen the frost go up and down throughout the evening so far. So, well, I guess early morning at this point. So I don't want to get my hopes up yet, but hopefully we'll start to see some faster progress because it's already been a couple of hours. And again, that condensation and possibly venting we're seeing from the bottom of Starship That is normal. We see that with every proof test. I think a lot of it, this might be condensation forming from all that cold metal. They also might be venting some liquid nitrogen through the pipes that feed the Raptor engines during a normal static fire engine, or any sequence that requires firing the engines, whether it's a static fire or a flight test. They have to chill down the engines before they ignite them. So they often will flow liquid oxygen, or in this case, liquid nitrogen, perhaps through those pipes, and that could be that some of that condensation we're seeing coming out of the base of Starship. And Bent Strait, a very big supporter of the stream, is showing up again to provide us the $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Bent Strait. Another live stream, this tank watching devotion. A little bit of coffee fun. Thank you so much. I think we are all going to need that because 3 nights in a row of this is rough to say the least. Although the one good side of it is that it means that Mary does not have to be out there in 100-degree heat in the middle of a Texas afternoon. But in terms of sleep, it is certainly rough. I know we always get questions about why they test at night. Again, the road that goes past the launch site leads to a public beach. So in order to reduce the disruption to the general public, they close the road only at night when possible. We might see some flight tests and whatnot that require them to do it during the daytime, in which case they do have permission to close the road on the middle of the day a certain number of times. They're not supposed to do it on a regular basis. So that's why they're testing at night. The reason we saw some more afternoon tests earlier in the summer, over the past few months, was because the beach was actually closed due to COVID. But now they have reopened the beach to the public. So once again, SpaceX has to move the large majority of their testing to nighttime to reduce the disruption to the general public. So that is why a lot of these tests are happening at night. It has nothing to do with, wanting to test during certain atmospheric or weather conditions. Just it's a time of day that is the least disruptive to the public. That's an interesting question, Michael. Could the upper ring of frost we saw be from testing the header tank in the common dome? Interesting point. I think the header tank is the radius of the header tank is fairly small relative to the size of the Starship's radius. So I don't think it definitely does not touch the outer rings of Starship that we see the frost form on. But perhaps it could still, the coolness could transfer through the bulkhead into the outer skirt of Starship. I'm not sure. That is a good point. That could be a possibility. And perhaps if they proof test the header tank first, that might be why it takes a while for the rest of the Starship to fill up with liquid nitrogen. But I don't know for sure. There could very well be a different reason. Maybe they just want the vehicle and all the ground support equipment. So they want to give us some time to cool down before they do the full test. I'm not sure, but we can clearly see the frost is now rising up the side of Starship. So this is looking promising. It definitely looks like they're starting to fill up that liquid oxygen tank with liquid nitrogen finally. So looks like we're making some progress here. Yes, correct, Nate. They're using liquid nitrogen because it is inert. If they were using liquid nitrogen or liquid oxygen and liquid methane like they normally do for Raptor engine firing, whether it be a static fire or a flight test, if something goes wrong and you have liquid oxygen and liquid methane in the Starship, that can lead to a big explosion like we saw with Starship SN8. But with the current liquid nitrogen used for the proof test, they avoid the potential for an explosion if something goes wrong. So that is the reason that they're using liquid nitrogen. So again, when I say liquid oxygen and liquid methane tanks, that's just referring to what propellant goes in those tanks during a static fire or flight test. That is not what is used in those tanks during the cryogenic poop test. Both tanks will be filled with liquid nitrogen during this test. At least that's typically what happens. There have been a few cases in the past where they wanted to test some ground support equipment, so they put liquid oxygen and liquid methane in the tanks, but most likely the test tonight is using liquid nitrogen in both tanks. Some, again, we don't really know why they were doing the test. It could have been a leak, it could have been a different issue. It could have been a plan if they wanted to do multiple tests. We don't know exactly why they have to do a third test. We know the second test is because they had a leak during the first test, they had to retest. But we don't know if the third test is a result of an issue during the second test. It could have been that the minimum number of tests planned was 2, and then they had an issue on 1, so they had to increase that to 3. We don't know, but it's very possible there was some problem last night or early yesterday morning, I guess at this point, that caused them to have to do a test today. So I wish I had an answer for your question, but unless Elon tweets a definitive answer, there's no way for us to know for sure. And Fossil Audio Research Group says, LN2 keeps me awake. Certainly exciting to watch a Starship get fully frosty. Now, it looks like we're seeing more good progress on the frosting front. But I am rewinding the stream about a minute ago, and I think there was some frost forming on the far left-hand side of Starship that I'm not seeing anymore. So that's a bit interesting, but we'll keep an eye on it. Although I think I am still seeing a little bit of frost on the far left, so hopefully that will continue to expand. And I'm going to double check our ambient audio. It's super windy right now because there's a hurricane in the Gulf that is blowing some strong gusty winds onshore. So the ambient audio that we usually have that has really cool sounds of the Starship venting, we have not been using tonight because all you hear is wind noise, but I'm gonna see if the wind has died down any, but let's see. Actually, it sounds like the wind has died down a lot. That sounds, let me know what you think, chat, but to me that sounds like pretty good ambient audio. There's the wind. I jinxed it. I guess it was not blowing when I said that, but it definitely seems not quite as bad as it was earlier. It was like a non-stop howl earlier. Now it seems kind of in and out, but let me know what you think. I did turn it down a bit. Sorry, I think I made it look a little bit too loud at first, but give me some feedback if that ambient audio is bearable or if the wind noise is too bad. Yes. Curtis, I'll put my name on screen. Sorry for that echo. I was trying to listen to the ambient audio on the actual feed, and I forgot to mute the audio before I played it back. Sorry about that. But I am Michael Baylor from NASASpaceflight.com. That is my info on screen right now. I am a reporter. I also do the overlay system you're seeing right now with all the information. So that's what I do. Yes, and I think chat is liking the ambient audio. I am too. It was the wind was, like I said, unbearable earlier, but it seems like the wind has died down. So I think we'll leave it on for now, and hopefully we'll get some nice venting noises from Starship, especially once they get it filled with liquid nitrogen a bit more. The vents were pretty loud yesterday, so stay tuned for some good audio. It's about a 6 or 7 second delay from when you see the event happening to when the sound reaches us, because this camera, I think, is about 1.5 miles away or something like that. So it will be a sound delay, but listen carefully for those venting noises from Starship when you see a plume of gas shoot out. And again, chat, if the wind noise becomes a problem, just let me know in chat and I can turn it down. But sounds like we're still getting some wind, but it's not quite as bad, like I said. So just let me know. But still, I'm going to do another frost check. I'm rewinding the stream, and it looks like, yeah, the frost is continuing to expand, so that's good. I'll check the question too. It looks like Jack has given me a question refill, so I appreciate that, Jack. So there's some of these. Again, I'm seeing a lot of questions about why they're doing this again, and once I know some people are new, so I have to keep repeating this again. If you've been here since the beginning, I hope you understand that other people are joining throughout the stream. So sometimes we have repeat questions, but I want everyone to know that we do not know why they are doing the test again. There's some reason, but Elon has not tweeted it, so it could have been a minor issue. It could have been a planned additional test. We don't know exactly why. Tom, the high bay is tall enough for just a super heavy booster. The Starship super heavy full stack will be much higher than the high bay. So that just tells you how tall that stack is going to be. It is going to be ridiculously tall. I think Elon said the high bay was going to be 81 meters tall. So that is, quite a good bit smaller than the full Starship super heavy stack, which is going to be 120 meters tall. So the high bay is basically 2/3 the height of the full stack. Chris, thank you for the super chat. Can you give us a short recap of yesterday's pressure test results? Yes, I can. So, yesterday we saw Starship SN8 go fully frosty. Everything was covered in frost. We presumed they did some thrust ramming with the hydraulic ram, although we don't get any visual indicators of when that happens. We don't know for sure, but we think from everything we could tell, it seemed to be a good test. But the fact that they are doing it again today does make us question whether or not it might have been a small issue that has necessitated a retest, but no way for us to know for sure. It could have been a planned test like I was mentioning earlier, or it could have been a minor issue. But from what we could tell, we didn't see any obvious problems yesterday. It seemed to be a good test. A question from Nicholas about the height of Super Heavy. Super Heavy is approximately 70 meters tall. I think it might have increased to 71 in the latest Elon tweet because of a change of the landing leg design. But approximately 70 meters for Super Heavy, 50 meters for Starship, for a combined total of 120 meters for the entire Starship Super Heavy full stack. So very, very tall launch vehicle system. And Harold, thank you for the membership. That was the Powdraft membership. Thank you so much. If you are interested in becoming a member, you can click that white and blue join button on your screen. And that'll give you all the list of perks you get for being a member if you're interested. You get the perks range from early access to Mary's video clips, Discord, secret Discord server that's exclusive only for members. We do occasional members only live streams for Starship testing that gives you a clean feed of the tests. We're not doing that tonight, but for the larger tests, we often do that. And Dawson's working on getting us additional server capacity that allows us to operate more live streams at once without relying on his home computer to run that bonus stream. So in the future, we'll be doing a lot more members only clean feeds to this test because some people don't like hearing us commentate. We understand that, especially if you're an expert. Maybe you don't want to hear us answer questions over and over again. You've heard us answer before. It's totally understandable. So one of the member perks is a clean feed with only ambient audio that we have for some of the major Starship tests. But again, we don't have that tonight, but we will likely have that for some of the upcoming events of Starship SN8. That one frost line is rising pretty well, but we're not seeing much frost anywhere else, which is interesting. Super chat from Vinny. have we considered that everything went well last night and we might be doing a test of the flaps tonight under cryo? Good thought, but if you look very closely, the flaps are actually tied down. I think that's so to keep them in place in case of strong wind. But because the flaps are tied down, we do not expect any flap testing tonight. And then Randy, welcome to PadRap. We appreciate the support as well. Sim saying, it's so windy and the air is warm, probably keeping the tank still facing the wind, too warm for ice formation. Yeah, we've discussed wind before and wondered if it is a factor on the ice formation, because we often see the frost line seems to form in an ununiform fashion. It usually ends up spreading out to cover the entire starship, but it often does form in a weird pattern. So perhaps that's why. I would love to hear, a SpaceX engineer provide the actual reason for that. But unfortunately, we don't have any SpaceX engineers on the live stream today. And yeah, no cryogenic crew test scheduled for tomorrow. At least for now. Hopefully it does not change. So far, we have not seen them. They typically have been trying to avoid testing on weekends, even in the evening. But I think it still might be a possibility, given that they're doing this in the middle of the night. I don't think the general public will be too inconvenienced by road closures at this time of day. There's a big vent. Let's see if we can hear this. So I'm going to shut up. I think if you listen really closely, you can maybe hear it, but the wind is making it a lot harder to tell today. In the past, we've seen we've had a lot less wind, so it's a lot easier for us to pick up the venting noises. But I think it's kind of blending in with the wind right now. But let me know in chat if you were able to hear those venting noises. Okay. When we've seen a lot of venting in the past, I mean, actually, look at that. It looks like the frost is increasing rapidly, so they might be doing this kind of fast fill operation right now. I don't think this is detanking. I see some people in chat saying it's detanking, but it looks like, in fact, the CH4 tank is now frosting. So I think they are loading both tanks right now. I'm going to skip some steps in our timeline here and go all the way to frost increasing on the CH4 tank. That is a different pattern than we've seen before. On the past few nights, we've seen the liquid oxygen tank completely frost over first before the CH4 tank frosted over. But it seems like they're both kind of they're both frosting up at the same time right now, unless the liquid oxygen tank is actually full and there's just not as much frost on it for some reason. But we can clearly see that methane tank is frosting up good right now. So this is exciting. I'm going to make some modifications to our timeline because, as often happens with Starship, events have not proceeded as expected. But that being said, no indications that this is a problem at all. This clearly seems to be a planned sequence of events. So I'm just going to modify our timeline to more accurately reflect how how these events have unfolded this evening. So I'm going to combine the frost increasing both tanks rather than having separate tanks in our timeline. And then I guess we had frost increasing on the LOX tank first. So I'll go frost increasing, LOX tank frost increasing on CH4 tank, and then frost holding on both tanks. I think that is the updated timeline I'm going to put on screen. So let's go with that. That wind is really picking up, so I'm going to turn down the ambient a bit. Again, keep giving me feedback on the ambient audio. If it gets too loud, let me know. Okay, timeline coming back. This is pretty impressive. We've seen the methane tank frost over pretty quickly, probably a similar speed we're seeing right now in the previous days of testing, but that liquid oxygen tank is also frosting over super rapidly. We've definitely not seen them frost up at the same time. Like I said, it was usually one tank after the other, but right now they seem to be frosting up in parallel, which was a little bit more exciting. And Spidey, I think the liquid oxygen tank is under a decent amount of pressure right now. I do not think they will make that mistake twice. SN3 was caused by not enough pressure being in the liquid oxygen tank while the methane tank was under a lot of, or was filled with a lot of liquid nitrogen, so the methane tank collapsed into the liquid oxygen tank, but I don't think they'll be making that mistake twice, so I would presume that the liquid oxygen tank is under a good amount of pressure right now. And it looks like that methane tank is pretty much to the top. The bulkhead actually sits inside of that upper ring. So even though the frost has not reached the top of the Starship, the frost line right now is actually at where the bulkhead starts to go inward. So the frost should not rise much higher than it is right now. At least on the outside, that is about as high as you'll see the frost get. So Methane tank pretty much frosted over entirely right now. Still seeing the frost expanding on the lower liquid oxygen tank. We're also seeing a lot of condensation coming from that tank farm right now on the left-hand side of your screen. That's not a tank farm leak. That is normal. They're just probably releasing some oil off. It's funny that methane tank frosted up so quickly that it is basically not, it's basically a frost holding status, but the liquid oxygen tank is still frost increasing. So I think I'm just going to merge the timeline into one frost increasing status because clearly the methane tank is not increasing right now. It is fully frosted up. There we go. That liquid oxygen tank is still getting more frosty, but they do seem to be getting pretty close to the point where they could be using those thrust rams to simulate the Raptor engine. Again, we have no way of knowing really when they use the thrust rams. There's no visual indicators, but there are 3 hydraulic rams at the base of the launch stand. And those hydraulic pistons will push up against the bottom of the Starship and simulate the forces that Raptor engines would create during a flight test. Nathan Hartman, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate the $5. You all are going to need some fancy equipment and coffee to keep up with how quickly things are going to ramp up. Thanks for what you do. Thank you, Nathan, and I can assure you that your contribution will help with getting more fancy equipment and certainly coffee. So thank you so much. Another super chat from Blake. Wow, Blake is really coming through these last few streams. I recognize your name. Blake says SN8 looking like a frosty boy. Thank you, Blake. And Yanti, $5 Australian. Thanks for the coverage as usual. I'm wondering if these test starships are using autogenous pressurization for the methane, so not needing COPVs. Good question. I wondered that too. I would like Elon to confirm that. We do see some, hard to tell, but if you look carefully in the center of Starship right now, there are some pipes that run up the side. I'm not sure if those are for fueling Starship, propellant loading Starship, or if those are potentially pressurization lines for the tanks. So I'm not quite sure what those are, but that would be, I would like Elon to confirm if autogenous or autogenous, however you pronunciate that, is something that is still in the plans with Raptor. JJ, appreciate the super chat. Yep, I'm doing my best. Being the only person hosting tonight. Definitely easier with more than one person, but we've had a pretty chaotic week of live streams, so Some of the other team members are taking a break, and I will get my chance to have a break at some point. We're stretched thin, but we still have enough people to keep the live streams going. It does look like the methane tank frost level has had a small decrease. You can see that little dip on the left-hand side that was not there before. So that is a bit interesting. You also can see some frost on the far left, the liquid oxygen tank starting to wrap around. Again, the methane tank or the CH4 tank is a tank that's on top, that's the upper ring of frost, and the lower section of frost is the liquid oxygen tank. Another super chat from Blade. Wow. Looks like ice is flying out from under SN8 every now and again. Yes, I'm noticing that too. That is pretty cool to see. I think Elon posted a video of that on a previous test and joked that it was snowing in Texas. DB Crypto, thank you for the $10. They say, here is the venting from time to time to keep the home life happy. Great job, NSF, and thank you, Mary. Yes, thank you, Mary. Not many people would be willing to be out there all night watching these tests. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Mary is the only person literally the only person on the planet that has that has this level of dedication to produce this amount of content on a daily basis. It is quite incredible. So we all appreciate what Mary does because, like I said, she's impossible to replace. Wow, lots of chat messages for Mary tonight. I know she really appreciates your support, so thank you so much for saying that. And again, if you have a question about the test or Starship or anything related to spaceflight, just tag at NASASpaceflight in chat, and I will put your question into our question queue. And if I know the answer, I will do my best to answer it. Andy asking, why do the tank farms vent? Do they always vent or just during tests? What would keep them from bursting when they don't vent? So the liquid nitrogen does boil off from time to time. It's like if we have a boiling pot of water, you get that vapor, that gaseous water evaporating, that H2O evaporating. You have the same type of thing with the nitrogen. So you have to vent out that extra gas. But I mean, in terms of just during tests, we do see a lot more venting during tests. That might be because of how they are conditioning the propellant. I'm not exactly sure. That's if we had like an expert on, that's something I would certainly want to ask them. But we definitely see a lot more venting from the tank part during the test. I'm not on that end, I'm not exactly sure why that is. But they do have to vent tanks from time to time, like I said, just to vent off that nitrogen that is turned into gas, or liquid oxygen that's turned into gas, whatever propellant or liquid cryogenic substance they are using for the test. It really seems like that frost is coming down now, so I'm going to remove our timeline because it doesn't seem like, I mean, I don't want to say they've aborted yet. We haven't seen that dual venting. Usually when they abort, we just see them vent a lot more, so but they could also be detanking it by draining out that nitrogen, so interesting that we're seeing the frost recede right now. I wouldn't say that's a great sign, but we've also seen some interesting things. The frost goes away and it comes back from previous tests. So certainly could just be a temporary thing. I would not leave yet. You could still miss the test, but I'm not quite sure what the status is right now. So I'm going to remove the timeline temporarily until it becomes more apparent what is going on. Ryan's asking about the current wind speed. Let me check. There is a hurricane out in the Gulf right now, so some of those outer bands of the hurricane are causing some strong wind in Boca Chica. But there isn't actually a weather station though at the launch site. It's like on a weather app or something, so you have to look at a nearby town, which in this case usually happens to be several miles away. So let me look up Port Isabel. It's usually a good place to check. See what the wind speed is there. Looks like 20-mile-per-hour winds right now, so pretty strong, but not anything too crazy, but still a strong enough wind for a microphone to pick it up, and for that venting you see on screen to be moving pretty quick. But yeah, that frost on that liquid oxygen tank is receding fairly quickly. That is not something that I would consider to be a great sign. I should mention though that could have been the cryogenic crew test. We did see, I think it was Starship SN8 5 or 6, had a really quick test. So that could have actually been a successful test. We don't know for sure, but we definitely saw both tanks fully frosted. So perhaps it was just a quick test tonight. I don't know for sure, but definitely looks like defrosting is the status we're at now. So I'm going to update our timeline and bring it back. Pretty apparent that this is not just like a temporary dip in the frost. It is definitely going down pretty quickly right now. So unclear if it was an abort or a successful test. Could really be either option. Hopefully it's a successful test because I would like to get some sleep tomorrow night. I can tell you that much. And wow, Blake, again, 39 Australian dollars. I don't know what to say, Blake, but we really appreciate your support. It means a lot. And it's because of people like you that the rest of the people in chat get to experience streams like this, because they are very expensive to produce from an equipment standpoint, from a data perspective. So I know I appreciate your support. I'm sure everyone else in chat appreciates your support. It does make it really makes these streams possible. We're not just saying that to be nice. It is actually true. If people didn't donate, it would not be possible for us to afford to put on these streams. So that's not your first super chat. You've been putting in a lot of support. So if people in chat could please say thank you to Blake for any contributions tonight, I would appreciate that. It's really helpful. Here's a good question. How would you convince a non-space nerd that spaceflight is useful to humanity? Well, I mean, you can debate whether going to the moon or going to Mars is worth the money, worth the time and the effort when we have problems here on Earth. But what I think is less debatable is to get to the moon and Mars. You know, you really to do it sustainably. You really need reusable spacecraft to lower the cost of launch. And when you invest the money to develop reusable spacecraft and reusable rockets like SpaceX is doing, that is going to lower the cost of access to space to many other things, like launching Earth observation satellites that help us predict where a hurricane is going to go, or something like that, or help predict, how the crops are going to perform this year, or what other kind of climate conditions are, and stuff like that. So I think you can debate, whether you think the going to Mars is useful for humanity or something like that, but the side effects of doing so or doing something like that have good implications that benefit everyone. And if you look at, basically a large percentage of Earth science that is used for a lot of the common topics right now, in terms of how Earth is changing and whatnot, all comes from NASA's data. So without the Earth observation satellites that NASA has launched, many of the very important problems that we have on Earth would be in a much worse state. So you can say, like, why are we going to the moon when world hunger is a problem? Well, believe it or not, you can actually trace world hunger back to spaceflight in some ways, because there are satellites up there that are helping solve issues related to world hunger. So, drought is a big problem right now and stuff like that. So, having Earth observation satellites that can help us understand why things happen the way they do does actually tie into things like that. And, also, another thing is a very large percentage of this world does not have internet right now. And because of those same reusable rockets that are being developed to help us get back to the moon can also launch large amounts of satellites very affordably. So that's going to allow constellations like Starlink to enable internet access for everyone on this planet who does not yet have internet. So lots of good implications come from investing in technologies, whether you think the actual, 20 billion that NASA is going to spend developing a certain rocket or whatever is gonna help. It all works out in the end. You can like pick out certain things that NASA does and say, well, maybe this rocket is not the most efficient use of our money and it's not helping that much, and that may be true. But the other programs NASA has, like the Artemis program, human landers that are going to be giving SpaceX money to develop these kind of launch systems, that does help. So that's a long answer, but I think that is something that people overlook. They think about the goal too much, which if the goal is going to Mars, they just settle on why does going to Mars help us. They don't think about why do the tools that we need to get to Mars, why could those potentially help? When you think about why the tools that help us get to Mars could be useful in other implications, you realize that the same technologies that get us to Mars could have a much broader impact on society. But back at Starship, you can see that tank, the liquid oxygen tank, is almost completely frostless, and the methane tank continues to lose frost. So definitely looks like we're into detanking operations. What's up, Marcus? How's it going? So most likely what's going to happen here is they're going to fully detank, get all the nitrogen out. The liquid nitrogen will be drained out. The gaseous nitrogen that has boiled off will be vented out. So we'll see a lot of venting as they release all the pressure. And once the vehicle or the Starship prototype, whatever you want to call it, is fully safe, if they're actually done testing for tonight, they will reopen the road. And that is how we will know that testing is done for tonight. So I guess early this morning. For me, in my time zone, um, it's still Thursday, but in Boca Chica, it is now Friday morning at 1:25 a.m. local time. Horace, we do not know how many cryo tests there will be. Presumably, this is the last one, but if there is an issue tonight, they could need to do another one still. So to be determined. But as of now, this is the final road closure for cryogenic crew testing. But as usual, they can always add more road closures. Marcus, I see that you messaged Chris something. I think he might be at work right now, so I'm not sure. Oh, you messaged me too. Okay. I will respond to your message, Marcus. Thank you. Yeah, still seeing that frost line decrease. Let me check the panel. DB Crypto, thank you for another super chat. Thrown down 199 to say thank you, Mary and Anissa. Appreciate it, DB Crypto. And still waiting to see what happens with the frost. Sorry for the lack of commentary. I am working to get myself some help. So stay tuned. 1 second, everyone. I apologize for the minor interruption as I work something in the background. And again, it's unclear at this point if it was a successful test or an aborted test. We did see a lot of frost though, so presumably this might have been how they planned the test to go tonight, although it did seem to be a bit quicker than previous nights, so that might have just been a misconception on my part based on the fact that the liquid oxygen tank did not fully frost over like we had seen on previous nights. I'm not exactly sure. But it does sound like I have some extra help me commentate for a bit. Do we have Marcus on the call?
Hey, how you going, Michael? What's going on, buddy?
Good. Glad to finally have some help, and we finally managed to get you on the stream. I know time zones it's been difficult, but it's something we've wanted to do for a while now. So glad
Yeah, well, that's it.
Out.
That's exactly right. It's always been extremely difficult to get on to a lot of these streams because I'm generally sleeping. But in Australia right now, and I'm assuming we've got a big bunch of Australians here watching because, hey, it's perfect time for us, 5:30 p.m. For me here. So, yes, fun times. I may be joining at the wrong time, though, because are they detanking?
Yeah. It does appear so. I don't again, I'm not sure if they aborted the test because there was an issue or if that was what they expected to happen tonight. Kind of unclear. So I guess we'll have to find out if they schedule another road closure. If they have to do another cryoproof, that would obviously be an indication that it wasn't a test that went as planned, but we'll see what happens with the road closures. But yeah, it definitely looks like they're detanking right now, so we will stay live and see what happens with the road. Usually what we do is we wait for the crew to return to the pad, and if we see them open the road, and that's a good indication that they have completed testing for the day. But yeah, you're really going to pay off with all this night testing now that they have to test when the beach is closed anyway.
Yeah, right. Well, to be totally honest, I didn't even know that they were going to do another cryo test. I thought last night's would have been the last one we would see, so this one took me by surprise. I've just actually come back from a few days away, so yes, I just plugged in a moment ago. I'm like, oh, okay, they're cryo testing again.
Yeah, I assumed it was over too, and then I checked the road closures a couple hours ago, and I noticed that they had for some reason not canceled their current closure, and then Mary reported that the road was closed. So here we are with a third cryogenic group test in a row. So
yeah, great. Oh, big hello to Mary out there doing the hard job. Actually, out there all night as usual, filming this for us all. It's amazing what you're doing out there, Mary. Really is, and we can't thank we can't thank you enough for your time. We really can't. It's impossible to express the gratitude that I'm sure we all have, everybody here. So, it's most appreciated. So thanks everybody for donating to this. All the donations that go through super chats here, and big thanks to to people like Blake there that are donating to this cause, because it's incredibly important for these streams to be able to continue, and it benefits the entire community, not just NASASpaceflight, all of us, me making content as well, referencing this material all the time. And, I couldn't do what I do without Mary. So, yep, we love you. It's just awesome that you do what you do, and you're sitting out there all night. So thank you. But yeah, what I'm sort of interested in right now is why they're actually doing this test. There's no indication that I've seen at this point in time. I know there was a leak. It was the leak before last night's test, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we don't know if it happened again or why they're doing a third test.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm just quickly scrubbing through the feed here, doing a quick just switch back and forth to see what's kind of happened through the night. So it looks like they've had the liquid methane tank filled for quite a while. Obviously it's detanking now, but it doesn't look like they've had the liquid oxygen tank filled in any way, as far as I can see.
About 35 minutes ago, it was pretty frosty, but it was not like fully covered in frost on all sides. We just saw like some stripes.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's
quite sure why that
kind
happened.
of frosted on one side, wasn't it?
Yeah. On the previous 2 nights, it was both tanks were completely fully frosted over. So that's definitely the one part that makes you wonder if they aborted tonight. But then again, it was quite a while between, like, the total time it took from the start to the finish seemed to be about the same as the previous nights. So it might just be there was some like environmental condition that caused there to be less frost in the liquid oxygen tank tonight. But then again, it doesn't really make much sense because the methane tank frosted over just fine. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm almost wondering whether they needed to test something specifically with the CH4 tank, the methane tank, just because that seems to be where they've got a good, they obviously had that fully filled with the liquid nitrogen. I'm just wondering whether they needed enough pressure in the bottom tank so that it didn't go and topple over like SN3. Hang on, it was SN3, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm still in holiday mode. But yeah, I'm just wondering whether they need enough pressure, and maybe they've got a bit of liquid nitrogen in that tank to try to keep enough pressure in there to hold up the CH4 tank. That's total speculation, obviously. But I'm just wondering whether they were testing something there with specifically with that CH4 tank. Question there in the comments.
Really good point.
Question there in the comments about the speed of the wings. I don't know what the maximum speed are. We've seen them move them back and forth a few times, but that's been done very slowly. I'm assuming they've got the capability of moving much faster than that. But I don't know. Do you know anything about that model?
No, I mean, they are powered by Tesla motors, so presumably they are quite responsive, but yeah, we've not, like you said, we've not seen them flap at a very high rate of speed, so that'll be something to watch for sure. I presume for an actual free fall descent, they would have to be capable of pretty quick movements and corrections, so I would think they can move quite quickly, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, once again, thank you so much, Blake. I see all your super chats, and as we said so many times tonight, we really appreciate your support.
Yeah, absolutely. Just makes such a massive difference to what can be done. And you know, these things, as much as everybody's may not be sure about it, you know, these things cost money. Just the cost of the bandwidth. I can't quite recall how you guys have got your redundancy set up, but I know in a few occasions, Das has mentioned that that there's multiple copies of the stream going up at any one time in quite high definition, obviously. So, you know, that's not cheap out on mobile connections.
We have a total of, I think there's 3 modems running tonight. We can run more modems, but multiple modems all running. So if you consider how much one single cellular data plan costs,
yeah,
it's really expensive. And also, if you buy like an unlimited cellular data plan, at least in the United States, most of them are not actually unlimited. It's unlimited, but after a certain amount of data usage, they cap your speed. If you have truly unlimited data, it is very expensive. So the data plans are not cheap.
Yeah. So it's interesting, some of the conversations that have been going on with Twitter with Elon Musk over the last few days. Some of the ones that's been quite perplexing for me, and maybe this has already been talked about tonight, but one of the things that I've been quite surprised about was the comment that there would be no flame diverter system at Boca Chica, referring to the Super Heavy launch tower for Super Heavy. That one took me by surprise. And I'm not sure what people think about that. I'd like to know what people think in the comments. But you would think that, especially, I mean, if they're planning at any point to take that, to take a full size Super Heavy with the full set of Raptor engines with Starship on the top, this whole thing from Boca Chica, you would think that there would have to be some sort of flame diversion system for the Super Heavy tower there to do its thing, at least along with a number of, you know, deluge systems or something like that, water deluge systems. So yeah, I'm intrigued about that one.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw that tweet. I do not know how they're going to handle having projectiles flying in all directions from the thrust of those engines kicking up dust. That's going to be interesting, and I don't know how they're going to protect their pad infrastructure from being taken out. We have already seen, I think it was one of the SN4 static fires, not the static fire that had the explosion at the end, but there was a different static fire with SN4. I believe it was SN4, it might have been SN5, where the fuel line got knocked clean off from the thrust of a Raptor engine during a static fire. So, just with one Raptor engine, that's enough to cause serious damage to the infrastructure of the pad. So, with several more Raptors, it seems quite precarious to not have a flame diverter system. Elon even said in his tweet that might be a mistake. So we'll have to see what happens. But I tend to believe that the pad they're building Super Heavy right now at Boca Chica it's probably not designed for full 28 Raptor engines. It might just be the minimum number of Raptor engines to get a Starship prototype into orbit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, just because, I mean, obviously the first super heavy booster is going to have the two, as far as we know, the two Raptors initially for the test flights. I don't know whether they're actually going to fly that from that tower, or whether they're just going to do another, smaller launch test stand for that one. That one's going to be interesting. And it's still quite a way away, so we haven't seen enough clues really to know or to be able to predict what may happen there. But you're quite right. If it's 28 Raptors at a minimum, I don't see how that can really work for a tower that doesn't have any sort of flame diversion systems. Those Raptors are incredibly powerful, more powerful than anything of their size that I'm aware of. So it's crazy how much power that's going to put out with the full 28.
Yeah, I think it's also unclear if they had a proper launch infrastructure with 28 Raptors, having some uncertainty about whether or not they could actually safely do that. Not even thinking about Boca Chica Village, but thinking about South Padre Island and whatnot. That would be a lot of thrust and a lot of propellant in that full super heavy vehicle. It's possible they might put less propellant in during the flight test, like we saw SN5 and 6. I believe the reason they had a mass simulator was because they put the bare minimum amount of propellant needed to perform the flight, just to reduce the risk if something went wrong. So I'm not sure if we'll see the full 28 engine super heavy, and I'm not sure if we'll see a fully propellant loaded super heavy launch out of Boca Chica. It might be more of a trade-off before they move to their ocean platforms.
Yeah, I think you're right, Michael. The way I've been thinking of it so far, and again, these are all thoughts. Nobody's telling us this stuff. We make a lot of guesses and assumptions. Hopefully, we're being quite clear when we're assuming anything. But my assumption has always been that they would do a lot of test flights. They're gonna hopefully do orbital test flights until they get this entire system nailed down to the point where they're comfortable launching it from ocean platforms and that sort of thing. So once they're able to have these Starships return repeatedly from orbit and all this sort of thing, I think that's where maybe the launch tower at Boca Chica would probably stop being used at that point, apart from other test flights and things like that. I'm kind of thinking that once they're fully loading up Starships for testing, that'll really be more of a orbital ocean platform type deal. So that's going to be interesting. Oh man, awesome there, Brent. Wicked super chat. Thank you.
Yeah, wow. Thanks so much, Ben. He says, Marcus, glad you came in to help out Michael. Well, I can tell you, Marcus, I am glad you came to help out Michael also, because if it wasn't for that, I might have lost my voice with how much talking I've had to do tonight already. Going solo is tough. Yes, Ben, you are absolutely right.
It's super is tough. It's real tough, especially doing it for extended periods of time. I mean, this stream so far has been running for 3 hours almost.
Yeah,
more than that actually.
Earlier too. So we had a. Did you see the port stream we did? You probably didn't, because you said you were. No, I didn't.
I will.
You want to have your mind blown?
Yeah,
Watch this. That's just a live view from Port Canaveral right now on the left-hand side. That's our new camera we have at Port Canaveral.
Oh, it's wow.
Point tilt zoom camera that we can control remotely. So we watched the booster come in this evening, East Coast time. That was pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. And, yet again, another great example of why the support and super chats for the channel here is so important. So yes, thanks very much to everybody that's donating for that. Extremely generous of people. And we get a lot of entertainment out of this. I couldn't tell you how many minutes of time I've spent watching live streams over the last 12 months. It's a lot, and I'm sure many people get a lot of entertainment out of that. You go and watch a movie. You pay for that entertainment, and we also appreciate people paying for this entertainment. So it's awesome, absolutely awesome of people.
I'm going to find a link. I'm going to put a link to your channel in chat because we also appreciate you coming on for us.
Oh gosh, that's no problem at all. I jumped on. I'm like, oh, Michael's here by himself, and here I am at 5 p.m. in a day. It's obviously much later in the day for you, so I can appreciate how monotonous it can sometimes be to do live streamings through the night like this. Not that I do a lot of live streaming myself because of this exact same reason.
Well, I mean, I think it's really good to have the community all supporting each other and the different channels supporting each other. Because the more people support each other, the larger everybody grows. So really appreciate you being a team player as you are when we talk.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, no, I try to make sure that I'm doing the right thing by everybody. It's incredibly important for everyone to feel like they're part of that team, and you know, there's a lot of stuff that we constantly do to make sure that we're being very clear in crediting all these sorts of things that go along with you know, using various content or talking about various content. So yeah, and likewise, I always appreciate your you know, all of NASASpaceflight's you know, team spirit and friendliness there. It's wicked. Yeah, one thing I was going to ask everybody that's here actually is where everybody's from. Obviously, there's a lot of Australians here. I'm getting the odd message here, and sorry, I'm not replying to a lot of them as they come through. But yes, I personally live in Tasmania, Australia, which is the little island right down the bottom of Australia, about as far south as you can really go. And it gets a little bit cold here sometimes. We're just coming into our warmer months now. It's you know, springtime, so starting to warm right up.
Yeah. And Devin, I see your message about feeling bad you can't super chat, but you're a broke college student. No worries at all, Devin. To be clear, please only super chat if you can afford it. There are many other ways to support the stream. Just by liking the video, sharing it, watching it. That all helps support the stream because we still have this pre-roll ads and whatnot. Obviously, advertising cannot cover everything, so we appreciate super chats, but just do what you can afford, please. Do not feel bad if you cannot afford to super chat. We do these free streams for a reason. We want everyone to be able to experience the exciting stuff that's happening. So don't at all feel bad if you're just watching.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think people probably don't always appreciate how helpful it is to watch through content. Just seeing the odd YouTube ad, you know, multiplied by thousands of people, it adds up, and that's also a great help. So one of the great things that people can do to support a channel is to just, even if you're not interested in the topic, just let it run through. So at least you know the YouTube algorithms see all this, and they will then, you know, subsequently keep on promoting that channel and all those sorts of things. So liking, sharing, and obviously being a subscriber is a wonderful thing. And I try to say that in my videos as well. It's all extremely helpful. And what a lot of people also don't understand is when channels are collaborative, like we all are, you know, they feed into each other. So by a NASA spaceflight video doing well, you can be sure that there'll be the odd trickle views coming into one of my videos, and vice versa when mine are doing well. So all this traffic feeds into each other, and it's incredibly wonderful to have all of us growing together.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Let's see if we have any questions. Starhopper hopped without a stand yet. Starhopper, basically its landing legs were the stand for it at the launch pad. It just hopped from its landing legs. If you have a question from your Marcus, just tag us in chat. Do you think there will be a wet dress rehearsal before the static fire, Marcus?
What's that, mate? I missed that.
Oh, do you think there will be a wet dress rehearsal before a static fire?
I would say so. I mean, they've done that with pretty much every other ship that's flown. As far as I'm aware, SN5, SN6 certainly did. Starhopper did. What I'm more interested in with this one is how they're going to proceed at this point. So, we're betting, I think, that there will be 3 Raptors mounted to this simultaneously. I don't see why they would decide to only mount one on. I certainly don't. Well, I don't know. I don't see that there would be any benefit in doing a static fire just with one engine unless they needed to test something specifically in that regard that wasn't needing all 3 engines. So unless there's some kind of reason that they need to do a static fire with one engine only, I would expect that for them to all be fitted. But I'm not sure what the general consensus is. Again, that's just a total assumption from my part. It's going to be very interesting to see. This is a first, of course. We haven't seen this happen before.
Most likely it will take them a couple of attempts to get a 3-engine static fire to work. We have seen in the past with a single engine static fire, they have taken their time as they should, had a decent amount of support. So it will likely, I would predict it will take them a couple of trial and error runs to get a good 3-engine static fire off. If they actually go for a 3-engine static fire off the bat, they could very well be 1 or 2-engine static fire to ease their way into it, but definitely expect to see a 3-engine static fire at some point before the hop. I mean, another question is Elon in his tweet mentioned at least 2 static fires. So, do you think there's going to be? Why do you think there's going to be 2 static fires?
Yeah, I guess. Well, unless I sort of started to touch on one of the reasons, if they needed to test anything with a single engine first.
Yeah.
Maybe there would be an initial static fire of one engine before they fitted the other 2. That's the only reason I could think. I don't pretend to be an expert in how they need to plumb up an engine on the bottom of that thrust plug structure there. I think there could be a lot of reasons why you may need to just test the fuel flow just for one engine first, and all of that sort of thing before actually fitting the other engines. But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We haven't, as far as I'm aware, we haven't seen the actual engines for this prototype yet, have we?
No, you're not. Although, wait, I think
there was an engine
I could be mistaken. I remember, I know a couple of days ago, one of SN6's engines was spotted departing. I don't know if Mary can hear us right now. I think I remember hearing something about Mary spotting a Raptor at one of our chats. I don't remember if I'm thinking about the incident a couple of days ago or something new, but presumably they do have their Raptors selected by now, but we just don't know which ones they're going to be.
Yeah, I've been a little bit offline this week, so I'm a little bit out of date. But I know the other week there was a Raptor spotted like way in the distance, but we didn't get any serial numbers off it, I don't believe.
Yeah, I think that was SN29. I think we traced it down to be, which was the one from SN6.
Yeah,
but here's a good point. Gordon says a static fire from main tanks and then from header tanks. So if that's the case, with needing more than one static fire, then the header tank static fire would presumably require the nose cone, because the nose cone houses liquid oxygen header tank. So that could be interesting.
Yeah. Look, that's a good theory, although that would presumably require that the nose cone is mounted before the static fire occurs, obviously. And that's going to be one of the more interesting things. And I've seen so many theories about which nose cone is it going to be. Obviously, they've got nose cones lined up everywhere right now, and I suspect there's a lot of people saying, "Oh no, it's the nose cone that's stacked in the bay there." In the smaller bay of the 3, whatever we call that these days. It used to be the small bay, didn't it? But I don't think that we really know at this point or have enough evidence to know which nose cone it's going to be. I've been thinking for quite a while that it's going to be the nose cone that's got the stringers. It's not together yet still, though. So it seems to me that if they were going to stack a nose cone on this SN8, then they would have had the parts largely completed by now. So I'm kind of a little intrigued about that one, to be totally honest, because obviously the idea is to mount the fins on there as well. So we're looking for a nose cone that's also got the fin mounting points, and there is a couple of nose cones there, but they're not stacked. So I don't know. That's really really frustrating me because I'm sure the answer is right there. I'm just not sure what it is.
Yeah. I mean,
Hey,
perhaps.
Marcus.
Oh, we got Mary. Cool. We can hear you, Mary.
Hey, Mary.
Hi.
How are you today, or tonight for you, or this morning?
Tired.
Yeah, I reckon it's incredibly incredibly awesome of you to do what you're doing here every night, and you know this opportunity for you to be sitting up all night is coming more frequently these days, huh?
Yeah, with testing being at night, it's nice for the visual, but yeah, it's lack of sleep.
Yeah. And of
Yeah.
course, you're out all day a lot of the time capturing footage of everything else going on. So it's not like you're really
Right.
getting a lot of downtime there in between coming
Right.
back for this. I hope you're taking some naps in between.
I try. But thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's
Had to
awesome.
get on and say hi.
Oh, thank you. No, it's great to be on here. I know I've mentioned a few times that this night testing probably works out a little better for me because it's daytime where I am. So yeah, it'd be great to do a little bit more of it when we have the opportunity. At the moment, of course, it seems like we're just going through full detanking here, but there's still quite a bit of time left in the window, isn't there? What time does the window close today?
6 a.m.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they do, but
Well, we're seeing a double vent right now, so
yeah.
this looks like they might be venting out the last bit of pressure from SN8. So once this happens, Mary will report to us if the vehicle is returned to the pad and whether or not they remove the road closure. Because if they remove the road closure, we know they are done testing for today.
Right. But yeah, I was going to say they do have a nose cone inside the tent. So maybe that's the one for 8.
Yeah, I've been sort of wondering whether whichever one is going to be the one for SN8 would be something that's being worked on undercover, which is probably why we can't see as much evidence of it. So yeah, you could well be right there, because one of the ones undercover does have those fin attachment points, doesn't it?
I'm not sure if it does, but hopefully they'll bring it out soon and we'll get to have a really good look at it.
Yeah, no, it would be interesting to see if there's some good snapshots of that around where the fin mount points would be, because there's plenty of fins lying around. They're just not being attached to anything, so it's quite difficult to really piece together what's going on right now.
Right.
What also doesn't help is that there's another four or so nose cones sitting out there, and with no real indication where any of them are going.
Well, we know what happened to one today.
Yeah.
Yeah, got scrapped. So,
Yeah.
Pathfinders.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering about. A number of those, maybe they're just practice ones. They're really, it's one of the things they've had the most trouble with over the last 12 months, really, the nose cones, and they've scrapped a good number of them at this point.
Right. Yeah, it got me excited when I saw them attached to the nose cone. I thought, ooh, they must be going to stack. Nope, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
It got scrapped. So.
Yeah, and that's of course the danger with making too many presumptions with what's going on here, because there's nobody out there telling all of us what's happening. There's no roadmap that we're watching to tell everyone real accurate details. It's a lot of the time it's a guess.
It is. Yeah, and the last Raptor that I saw was actually being loaded up to be taken away. So I haven't seen any new ones arrive.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're small enough that they can kind of be obscured in the cover of darkness quite a bit and unloaded, so you wouldn't necessarily be able to spot them either. You got to be sort of in the right place at the right time until they start.
Time.
Yeah.
And that's about it. A lot of times, just
paying
attention too.
until they start rolling down the road on a forklift, then they're then they're a little bit more obvious.
Yeah, good memories.
Yeah, that was a number of those shots have just been so cool to watch. It's so unorthodox to see these extremely expensive pieces of equipment just rolling down the road on a forklift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But the scale of the Raptor engines, you know, the force that they can put out is just so phenomenal. It honestly blows my mind to think that these are, you know, they've essentially got the capability of lifting over 200 metric tons, I think it is, for each one,
Mm-hmm.
with the aim to go much higher. So, you know, these things are holding incredible pressures. So, based on all your live streaming experience, guys, what's the prediction here? Are we thinking that they're going to detank and then maybe attempt another fill? How often do they do that?
I think they're probably done
thinking,
tonight. What do you think, Mary?
yeah, I that's what I think really too, that they're probably done for tonight.
I don't think, I'm trying to remember. I don't think we have seen them recycle a cryogenic proof test, at least recently. They definitely recycled. I guess the Starship SN8, the test tank, they may have made a few attempts that were aborted, but I don't know if we've seen a recycle for full Starship yet, on a cryogenic proof test at least.
Yeah. A couple of comments that I've missed a little earlier. One from David asking what the empty and fully tanked mass of Starship is. That's actually a pretty difficult question because there's the Starship that's being aspired to be the final one to go to orbit and back, which I believe had a propellant capacity somewhere around that 1,200 ton mark or so. And then you had the payload capacity of, you know, somewhere between 100 and 150 tons or whatever it might be. And these are all metric. But yes, how much the actual body of the ship weighs depends largely on how thick the current set of rings are and all this sort of thing. So, you know, we don't have real accurate information on that currently. But, you know, we can only go off what tweets have occurred in the past and that sort of thing. But the idea is for the mass of the overall body to keep coming down, so that it's as low as possible. And I imagine it's probably going to be up around. I can't quite remember. Has anyone got any stats on the actual mass of the body, like the dry mass of it? I haven't seen a dry mass metric for a long time, and it's probably changed a lot since it was last really clearly talked about.
I think I remember seeing one, but I don't remember what it was. And I have a feeling it's probably quite different now than it was when they released that number.
Yeah, and of course, you know, we don't know how much the heat shield will, you know, the heat tiles, I should say, will weigh, and all these sorts of things. So, really, they're still designing how that heat shield system's going to work. And I don't know if they've really nailed it yet. I know one of the more recent attempts.
Sorry, Marcus, I have to interrupt.
You're right.
We have an update. We have an update from the man himself. Elon Musk has tweeted that Starship SN8 has passed the cryogenic proof test. So
yes,
we have a confirmed successful test for tonight. So that means that they are detanking right now, and that is all for tonight. So it was a successful test. So that is very good news, because that means that the most important person, which is Mary, is going to get sleep tomorrow night. So once.
Awesome. No, that's good news for everybody. And
absolutely.
you know, onwards and upwards for the next step of SN8, because it's every step of the way from this point is going to be quite unique, something that we haven't seen. So really looking forward to the next week or so, watching how this is going to roll out. Any predictions? Are we thinking nose cone's going to come next, or are we thinking Raptors are going to come next?
I don't know. I mean, we're talking about whether or not they needed a header tank for a static fire with the header tank. They could still do a main tank static fire without the header tank if that was needed. They could do the main tank static fire first and then the header tank static fire after, and install a nose cone between the two static fires. So it's hard to say. Do you have any ideas, Mary?
Well, typically then probably tomorrow I would think they'll start taking the thrust simulator out and get ready for installing engines.
Yeah.
That's what's happened in the prior vehicles.
I think if they're likely to do a static fire, maybe they're going to test first the the liquid methane tank, header tank. Maybe they'll do a couple of tests around that to make sure that's working as intended, and then maybe the nose cone goes on. Then maybe there's static fires with the liquid oxygen header tank. I've still got no idea how that's going to be plumbed up though, and that's something I'm really interested to see.
That is a good question, because I don't know how, at least on the renders, I don't know how the liquid oxygen is run to the top of the nose cone.
Yeah, I've got no idea.
That, yeah, very good question.
That's been a total mystery. I don't know whether it's just going to run down one side, whether it's going to run inside the fairing at least temporarily, or whether it's going to run down the back in some way. And it's very strange. We don't see any evidence of any system there for it. So it's a total mystery, at least for me, at this point. I'm wondering whether these initial prototypes are just going to run it straight down through the middle, or, straight down through the middle of the main fairing area, and then perhaps just patch it down. But it seems like something that can't easily be cobbled together, because it's got to run through the liquid methane. So you'd either have to have something internally already piping down through it, which I don't think they've got, or you'd have to run it down through the outside and back in. It's weird. I don't know how they're going to do it.
And it looks like the road has opened up.
Awesome. Oh, well, successful test. I stuck around for the exciting bit.
You can see the venting has pretty much gone away, as the pressure is pretty much empty right now. So what do you think, Mary? Is it time to start wrapping up the stream to get you some sleep?
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Okay. So again,
I'd be wide-eyed and bushy-tailed in the morning.
Well, thanks so much, Mary, for being out there again tonight, and for all you do. It's so appreciated by all of us. Can't really convey that enough, I don't think.
It's a team effort. That's for sure.
It sure is, but you're such a huge percentage of that team. It's awesome that you're out there doing what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, and I can hear you fine. Sounds like the traffic's starting to roll through.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, but anyway, this is what I do. So,
awesome.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks to you, and of course, thank you to everybody that's actually watching. We've got over 2,000 here still, even though that it's pretty much wrapping up. So thanks everyone for coming in, and for the super chats that you're sending through. Awesome of you. It really all does go to a great cause. So yeah, most appreciated. And thank you very much for putting this on and for the invite into the stream.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcus. It was great having you on. And I'm sure you're welcome on anytime. Just message me or Chris or whoever on Twitter anytime you're available to help out on a stream, especially when we don't have very many people online like today. It's super helpful to have another voice. You probably saved my voice for tomorrow or for later today, like I said. So I really appreciated you hopping on as well. I am Michael Baylor. You just heard the voice of Marcus and Mary. I was the one who was commentating the first 2.5 hours of the stream or so. We also had Chris Bergen, our managing editor, on briefly, and Jack tuned in as well for a couple of questions. But that is going to do it today from Boca Chica. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. and we will see you all next time. I think the next live stream is probably either going to be the nose cone stacking or a fueling test or a static fire of some sort. It just depends on which event happens first. But
Yeah, that's exactly right. Which event
Whatever.
is coming first?
yeah, whatever the next big event is in Boca Chica, you can pretty much guarantee that Mary will be out there with the camera. So we will see you then. Again, thank you all for watching.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mary and Michael for all your work, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you
All
all.
right. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Marcus. Bye.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
Alright, the chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers fly!
Flight outside speed off. Speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.